Chapter 463. Yoon Shusha followed behind him. She sighed helplessly when she saw him climb into bed alone and tidy up the blanket to cover himself. She knew that he had straightened out his thinking, but he still needed time to get to the bottom of it. It was indeed a little harsh for him to accept another child and share her motherly love with him all of a sudden. Yo-Yo had always been sensible and obedient, so Yoon Shusha sat back on the bed and asked gently, "Yo-Yo, do you want to drink some hot water?" "Yes, I do." Yo-Yo pursed his lips. Yoon Shusha hummed in acknowledgement and picked up the thermos beside her. Before leaving the room, Yoon Shusha specially reminded Xiaochen, "Xiaochen, help me take care of Yo-Yo." Muochen glanced at Yoon Tianyu and nodded obediently. Yoon Shusha then left the room. Just as the door closed, Yoon Tianyu sat up from the bed abruptly. Xiaochen was startled. Seeing his gloomy face, he hurriedly asked, "What's wrong? It's very suspicious." "What do you mean?" Muochen was a little confused by his abrupt words and did not immediately understand what he meant. Yoon Tianyu's eyes were deep and cold. He suddenly turned to look at him and asked, "When did you find out about that man?" "Yes. Are you talking about the man who was chasing after us?" Muochen raised a brow. Seeing that Yoon Tianyu was talking about that man, he immediately replied, "After we entered the haunted house." "Didn't he see you?" "He saw me." "Then, why did you say that his target was me?" This matter was too suspicious. In the haunted house, he and Xiaochen looked exactly the same, especially in the dark. If that man had followed them from the haunted house, he should have seen Xiaochen. Yoon Tianyu remembered that Xiaochen was carrying a panda at that time, but he was not. If that man's target was Xiaochen, then it would be easy to identify him from his clothes. Unless he was not the only one who was targeting him? Many thoughts flashed through his mind. Yoon Tianyu had already thought of many possibilities, but he dismissed them one by one. Muochen did not know what was on his mind and only said solemnly, "That's because his target was very clear from the start. I don't know when that man started following you guys. At least, before we entered the haunted house, he was already following us. At the time, the panda I was carrying was so conspicuous. After entering the haunted house, I noticed that someone was following behind me, so I dropped the panda on the ground. He didn't even look at it and just walked past, which means that his target wasn't me. Then, he..." Halfway through his words, Yoon Tianyu's pupils violently constricted, and his voice instantly turned cold. "I understand now." "Hey, what do you understand?" Muochen's curiosity was piqued by his words. "Perhaps, that man's target wasn't just me." Yoon Tianyu suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Perhaps, that man's target was him and his mommy from the start. Fortunately, his mommy was separated from them in the haunted house. As his biggest target, that man naturally wanted to get rid of him first. Thinking deeper, he could not help but feel a little terrified. His phone rang all of a sudden. He picked it up and saw that it was a call from Lee Hanlin. He picked it up. "Hello. Director Yoon, are you at the hospital?" Chapter 464. His voice sounded wary. Yoon Tianyu immediately got off the bed and walked to the window. Lowering his voice, he answered, "Yes, I'm here. How's your injury? Is it serious?" Lee Hanlin's tone was anxious as he asked with concern, "Forgive me for not being able to visit you at the hospital right away." "It's all right, it's nothing serious." Yoon Tianyu paused for a moment before changing the topic. "How's that matter of yours?" "Yes. I've caught the culprit, but according to the surveillance footage, there are 2 of them. There's still one left." His voice got softer as he spoke, afraid that Yoon Tianyu would reprimand him for his incompetence. Yoon Tianyu's tone suddenly turned gloomy. "How did you do your job?" Lee Hanlin held the phone in his hand with tears streaming down his face. He knew it. He had done his best, though. "Where is he?" Yoon Tianyu calmed himself down and asked. Since he had caught the culprit, he must not hand him over to the police. He must force the culprit to reveal the ins and outs of the matter. Lee Hanlin immediately replied respectfully, "The culprit has been detained in a warehouse in the suburbs and is under heavy guard. However, he's been very tight-lipped and won't say anything." "Oh, Yoon Tianyu frowned and his lips curled into a sinister smile. Won't say anything? Yes. We've taken precautions to ensure his safety. Yoon Tianyu praised. Yes. You've done well. You'll get a raise this month. What a rare and precious gift. Lee Hanlin was immediately moved to tears. Thank you, Director Yoon. You've finally given me a raise. The family can barely afford to eat. Yoon Tianyu frowned in disdain. He looked out of the window and was lost in thought for a moment. Suddenly, he made a decision in his heart. He won't say anything, huh? Yes. We've tried everything. This guy is very tight-lipped and won't divulge anything. We found a poison sac in his mouth. Poison sac? Yoon Tianyu frowned. What's that? Director Yoon, this person is a professional assassin. The poison sac is in his mouth. Once he bit it open, he committed suicide by drinking the poison, Lee Hanlin explained. Yoon Tianyu felt a chill run down his spine. This method was too ruthless. After a while, he said, "Come pick me up tonight. I'll interrogate him personally." President Yoon, I don't think that's a good idea. Lee Hanlin asked in surprise. Just do what I say. Don't doubt me. With that, he hung up. When he turned around, Muo Chen was still leaning against the bed. He was quite a distance away, so he could not clearly hear the conversation between Yoon Tianyu and Lee Hanlin over the phone. However, he was keenly aware of the change in Yoon Tianyu's aura the moment he picked up the call. Cold, austere, and aggressive. The moment he got off the bed and walked toward the window, Muo Chen caught sight of Yoon Tianyu's incomparably cold and dark eyes. He was a completely different person from the naive and romantic look he had in front of Yoon Shusha. He had witnessed Yoon Tianyu's calmness before. When the Ferris wheel malfunctioned, if it were any other child, they would have been scared to tears. However, he didn't. Instead, he calmly made a phone call and then sat down patiently. Even after falling out of the carriage, although there was a moment of panic on his face, he quickly calmed down. He had never seen such a frightening look in a child's eyes before, though. Yoon Tianyu looked at Muo Chen. His heart was in a dilemma. Should he tell him about this matter? After hesitating for a moment, he decided to hide it from him. He would handle this matter well without anyone's interference. Thus, he lay back on the bed. Chapter 465. When Mu Yaja and Song Enya returned to the ward one after another, the rest of the Song family rushed over one after another. Song Enshi was now the apple of the Song family's eye, a little princess who was doted on. Upon hearing that something had happened to her, Song Yunshi and Jiang Chimeng hurried over. In the ward, Song Enshi was still crying non-stop. When she saw that her brother and mother had arrived, her coquettish skills became even more powerful. She kept throwing tantrums in Jiang Chimeng's arms. Her face was wet with tears, and her eyes were red and swollen. Jiang Chimeng's heart ached terribly. When she saw that a piece of hair at the back of Song Enshi's head had been shaved off and that the wound had been stitched up and was still bleeding, her heart ached so much that her eyes moistened. Song Yunshi stood at the side and kept coaxing her. He loved this younger sister of his from the bottom of his heart. Ever since she was born, he had given her the greatest love. However, he was usually busy with work and could not take care of this younger sister of his. Hence, the little girl did not appreciate his coaxing. Jiang Chimeng kept coaxing her, but Song Enshi did not give in to her. There was nothing Jiang Chimeng and Song Yunshi could do. When Song Enshi saw that Mu Yaja had arrived, she immediately wanted to break free from Jiang Chimeng's embrace and spread her arms and legs toward him. Uncle Mu, hug me. Uncle Mu, hug me. When she saw Mu Yaja, Jiang Chimeng did feel some resentment toward him. However, the Muse and the Songs were on good terms and had been friends for hundreds of years. Hence, even though she had a lot of complaints, she still maintained a very polite expression on the surface. After all, she could not make things too awkward. Otherwise, both families would not be able to show their faces. They had to give each other face. Hence, Jiang Chimeng said politely, "Yaja, you're here?" Aunt Jiang." Mu Yaja called out. Song Yunshi also called out unnaturally, "Uncle." "Mu." "Yes," Mu Yaja responded, as if he didn't see the awkward expression on Song Yunshi's face. Song Yunshi was only 4 years older than him, but Mu Yaja was older than him. For the proud and arrogant Song Yunshi, calling him Uncle Mu was a bit awkward. While Jiang Chimeng wasn't paying attention, Song Enshi jumped off her body and snuggled into Mu Yaja's arms. Mu Yaja had no choice but to carry her in his arms. His feelings toward Song Enshi were rather complicated right now. She was more concerned about Xiao Chen. She had been waiting for his call, but he hadn't called yet. Was the little fellow still angry with him? Song Enshi squirmed restlessly in his arms. It was obvious that she had been wronged and wanted his comfort. But right now, he didn't have the mood to deal with this little fellow's coquetry. Song Enshi stared at his side profile dejectedly, her face full of grievance. Jiang Chimeng looked a little embarrassed and smiled. Aya, look at this child. She's injured, yet she's still so restless. Still, I don't know why Enshi especially likes to stick to you. Mu Yaja patted her head but didn't say anything. Song Enya chimed in from the side. Yes, and she likes Uncle Mu the most, right? Song Enshi immediately said cheerfully, yes, yes. And she likes Uncle Mu the most. And she likes Uncle Mu the most. With that, she leaned her head sweetly into Mu Yaja's arms. Mu Yaja coldly curled his lips. From start to finish, he looked a little absent-minded. Chapter 466. The corners of Mu Yaja's lips curled up coldly. From the beginning to the end, he looked a little absent-minded. For a moment, the atmosphere was inevitably a little awkward. Song Enya also felt extremely awkward. Thinking of the things she should not have said to Mu Yaja earlier, she did not know how to smooth things over for a moment. Jiang Chimeng laughed awkwardly, but she was extremely unhappy inside. Today was supposed to be Children's Day, so she had asked Song Enya to bring Song Enshi to the amusement park for a day of fun. It could also be considered a happy Children's Day for the children, but the latter ended up injured and lying in the hospital. She had roughly heard the whole story from Song Enya. She did not explain it clearly over the phone, but Song Enya pushed all the blame to Xiao Chen. But in reality, Song Enya was also responsible for this. She was the one who brought Song Enshi out, so she was considered the child's guardian and parent. How could she not be responsible for the child's injury? At that time, Mu Yaja said that he was going to the dessert station, so she should have stayed behind to take care of the two children. However, out of selfishness, she wanted to have some privacy with Mu Yaja, so she went with him, leaving the two 5-year-old children behind. Since something had happened, she simply pushed the blame to Mu Chen. Perhaps she was used to being spoiled since young, or perhaps this was a common problem of Missy. She always felt that she was not in the wrong and had no sense of responsibility. However, she did not think that if she had stayed behind to take care of the children, would such an incident have happened. When she told Jiang Chimeng about this matter, she only said that Mu Chen had pushed her and did not mention that Song Enshi had bitten Mu Chen at all. He recounted the entire incident out of context. Of course, Jiang Chimeng believed that it was his son who had been mischievous and pushed Song Enshi from start to finish. Therefore, when Mu Yaja sat there with a cold expression and an absent-minded look, Jiang Chimeng was more or less displeased. Her child was injured. There was a deep cut on the back of her head that required 3 stitches and a piece of her hair was shaved off. She did not know if the cut would grow back in the future. The child had never experienced such hardships since he was young. Logically speaking, as Mu Chen's mother, Mu Yaja should also be responsible. Anyone with a bit of responsibility wouldn't have such a cold expression. However, even though she was displeased, she did not dare to voice her displeasure. Although the Song family is a prestigious family in the capital, and with Old Master Song status, they are still far from the Mu family's influence. Therefore, the Song family had to give the Mu family face no matter what. Even so, Jiang Chimeng still felt a little uncomfortable. Hence, she glared at Song Enshi and said, "Uncle Mu is tired. Get off me. Why do you always like to stick to me?" Song Enshi snorted. "I don't want that. I like Uncle Mu. Haven't you suffered enough?" Jiang Chimeng was a little anxious and scolded, "You're really disobedient." Sob sob. "Mommy yelled at me." Song Enshi's little face scrunched up as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Mom, and she likes Brother Mu. Just let her go," Song Enya said from the side. Mu Yaja suddenly put Song and Shi down and stood up. He was still worried about Muichen. It was getting late, and Fairy Tale Valley would be closed soon. Chapter 467. Even if it was a punishment, it should end here. Even if Muichen did not call to sincerely apologize, he had already lost his patience. Seeing that he was about to leave, Song Enya immediately went up to him and asked, "Brother Mu, where are you going?" "I'm going to pick up the children," Mu Yaja curtly replied. Jiang Chimeng picked up Song Enshi and suddenly said, "Yaja, there's something that I must remind you of. Boys can't be spoiled. This sense of responsibility must be nurtured from a young age. Take my Yunshi for example. He was also mischievous when he was young and caused trouble everywhere. However, I've told him since he was young that a man must be responsible. If he made a mistake, he should bear the consequences himself. Naturally, the songs won't pursue this matter. However, I still hope that Muichen can come and apologize to my Anshi." Mu Yaja's back view paused. In an instant, he exuded a sharp aura. He slowly turned around, but the expression on his face was even colder. "How to discipline my son is my family's matter. It's not up to the songs to interfere." Jiang Chimeng's expression turned ugly. Song Yunshi could not bear to listen to this and said unhappily, "Uncle Mu, what do you mean by this? The songs have already given us enough face after this incident. Now, they just want Muichen to apologize, sure." Mu Yaja coldly interrupted her. Song Yunshi was stunned. Jiang Chimeng's face immediately revealed a gratified smile. Then, "Can Enshi also ask Xiaoichen to apologize to him for biting Xiaoichen?" Jiang Chimeng's smile instantly froze at the corner of her mouth. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean? You should ask your daughter," Mu Yaja said and left the ward. Everyone was left looking at each other. Song Enya walked up to Song Enshi and asked coldly, "What exactly happened today?" Song Enshi raised her head and looked at her with teary eyes. She was probably most afraid of Song Enya at home. She knew that she had made a mistake, and more importantly, she had made Uncle Mu unhappy. While feeling wronged, he also felt a little regretful. Furious, the Missy hollered, "Say something. What the hell is going on? Why did Muichen push you?" Song Enshi burst into tears after being yelled at by her. Song Yunshi's heart ached. She immediately stepped forward and said, "The child is still young. Don't be so fierce to her. Brother, you're always spoiling her. Look at her, how willful has she become?" She glared at him and lowered her head to threaten him. "Uncle Mu won't like you if you don't behave yourself. Woo woo. It's all Muichen's fault. He didn't let me look at his watch, and he even snatched Uncle Mu away from me. Sob sob. He even said that I was ugly, so I was so angry that I bit him, just once. Sob sob." She sobbed and wept as she recounted the whole story. It turned out that Muichen really did not use much force when he pushed her. She had deliberately pretended to be pushed so that she could complain to Uncle Mu when the time came. She did not expect that she would fall on the stairs and hit the back of her head, resulting in this disaster. This time, Jiang Chimeng's face turned white with anger. She picked up her daughter's little hand and slapped it hard. "Why didn't you tell Mommy earlier? I was afraid that Mommy would scold me. Woo woo woo." Her phone suddenly rang. Chapter 468. Song Enya looked in the direction of the voice and saw that Mu Yaja's phone had slipped out of his pocket while he was sitting on the sofa. She picked it up. Initially, she did not want to pick it up, but when she saw the picture of a woman sleeping on the screen, she realized that the caller ID was a picture of a woman. In the picture, the woman's face was elegant and refined. Even though she was sleeping without makeup, she was still beautiful beyond compare. Her messy hair was scattered on the pillow. Against her snow-white skin, it was messy, but it did not diminish her beauty at all. The caller ID was only one word, sure. This was Mu Yaja's phone. She should not have picked up the call. However, when she looked at the photo on the caller ID, her imagination started to run wild. For some reason, she actually picked up the phone. Yun Shusha went to the nurse's station to ask where the hot water room was. The nurse was busy, so she did not answer her seriously. She searched for it for a long time, but she could not find it. She was about to return to the ward when she suddenly remembered that Xiao Chen needed to be hospitalized. Should she call Mu Yaja? She was too nervous when she sent the two children to the hospital outside the emergency room. After that, she was busy taking care of the two little guys. She was in a mess. Now that she suddenly remembered that she should contact Mu Yaja to come to the hospital. Even if there was a misunderstanding between father and son, they should communicate in time, right? Thus, she took out her phone and dialed a number. The phone rang a few times before it was picked up. On the other end, a woman's sharp and somewhat targeted voice asked, "Who are you?" Yun Shusha was stunned. The woman on the other end was obviously a little impatient. "Speak. Hello, is Mu Yaja there?" The woman gritted her teeth and said, "No." Then, she hung up the phone. Yun Shusha was stunned for a moment. She laughed at herself, but her heart ached. She thought that he must be very busy or was giving the children a punishment. In fact, he was very concerned about the children, but she called to tell him that Xiao Chen was in the hospital and to come over to take care of the children. She did not expect a woman to pick up the phone. What was the meaning of this? Yun Shusha was a little angry. She felt sorry for Xiao Chen. Previously, she had thought that Mu Yaja was a responsible father, but now, she had to put a question mark in her heart. "It's fine if you don't come." Who he was with had nothing to do with her. He didn't care about the children. She would take care of them. She was more than happy to take care of the child. As for him, what did he have to do with her? As she thought about this, she stood at the elevator door and waited to return to the ward. The elevator took a long time to arrive. The floor of the ward was high, so it took a while to get to the elevator. Suddenly, a hurried voice called out from behind him, "Brother Mu." She furrowed her brows and turned her head to take a look. Now that she thought about it, she shouldn't have turned back at that time. She wouldn't have caused a series of problems because of that scene. However, this was a story for another time. She turned around and saw Mu Yaja walking down the stairs, followed by a woman with a hurried expression. At first, the man did not seem to be in the mood to respond to her call. He walked down the stairs without looking back. Until the woman called out, "You left your phone with me. Don't you want it?" Mu Yaja stopped in his tracks and turned around. Song Enya immediately chased after him with a smile. Yun Shusha originally wanted to walk over when she saw him, but when she heard the woman's words, her heart skipped a beat. Mu Yaja's phone was with her. Was she the woman who had spoken sarcastically to her over the phone earlier? Chapter 469. For a moment, he froze on the spot. Song Enya walked up to Mu Yaja with a smile. The tender smile on her face made Mu Yaja a little dazed. He seemed to see the shadow of his mother when she was young in her. For a moment, he was stunned and could not react. Song Enya took out her phone. Mu Yaja reached out to take it, but she playfully put it away and carried it behind her back. Her mischievous look was just like when she was with him when they were young. "Brother Mu, don't be angry with me." Mu Yaja was stunned, but he did not say a word. The anger in his heart was greatly reduced by this smile that resembled his mother's. Song Enya knew that the man's cold expression was a sign of anger, so she reached out and hugged his shoulders. Acting coquettishly, she said, "Brother Mu, I'm sorry. I went overboard with my words just now. Perhaps, today's matter was indeed a misunderstanding. I shouldn't have said that. I didn't mean to say that. Please forgive me, okay? Please." Song Enya acted coquettishly. Mu Yaja had been indulging her since they were young. Sometimes, when she went overboard and angered him, she would coax him like this and beg for his forgiveness. This trick was tried and tested. Sure enough, Mu Yaja's expression improved a lot. "Yes. You're really not angry anymore?" Song Enya smiled in surprise and raised her head to look at his expression. She saw that his ice-cold expression had softened a little. Song Enya knew that he was no longer angry, and her heart was overjoyed. "Thank you, Brother Mu. Brother Mu, when you go back today, you must apologize to Xiao Chen on my and Ensh's behalf. I didn't fulfill my responsibility as an elder sister today, so I feel guilty toward Xiao Chen. Tell him that I'll definitely apologize to him with Enshi next time. Go up." Mu Yaja did not say much. He just reached out and patted her head lovingly, urging her to go upstairs to the ward. Song Enya nodded and handed the phone to him before reluctantly heading upstairs. Mu Yaja took the phone and was about to leave when he caught sight of a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. His expression froze as he turned his head, only to see Yun Shusha standing at the elevator entrance with a hot water bottle in her hand. Her eyes were fixed on him the whole time. His face, however, was cold enough to make one's heart palpitate. Yun Shusha looked at him coldly. Her eyes, however, were still. It was as if her heart was as dead as ashes. There was not a single ripple in it. She did not know why, but when she saw Song Enya hugging Mu Yaja earlier, the look of indulgence on the man's face inadvertently made her heart bleed profusely as if it had been sliced open by a razor blade. If she hadn't seen this scene with her own eyes, she wouldn't have known that this man actually had such a gentle side. Would he show such a doting and indulgent expression to a woman? Song Enya threw herself into his arms, but he did not push her away. The indulgence on his face undoubtedly pierced her heart. She did not care who this woman was or what her status was. She did not care about their relationship, nor why Mu Yaja did not appear in Xiao Chen's ward when he was in the hospital. Instead, he appeared at the staircase with an unfamiliar woman. What she cared about was what position Xiao Chen had in this man's heart. Chapter 470. So, those gentle gazes that he had shown her before were nothing more than an illusion? Was he just putting on an act? Was this woman the one he liked? So, what was she? Yun Shusha was a little confused, and her mind was in a mess. However, that wasn't what made her heart turn cold at this moment. Instead, it was the fact that Xiao Chen was still lying in the ward, feeling sad because of his heartlessness. Yet, he was still here, hugging a woman. When Mu Yaja saw her standing there, an inexplicable sense of panic flashed across his face, but he quickly suppressed it. He didn't know how much she had seen or heard. He also didn't know what this stupid woman was thinking as she stared at him motionlessly. Thus, he asked, "Why are you here?" They weren't far apart, and the man's voice was powerful and resonant. However, she acted as if she hadn't heard him and turned around. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for her floor, intending to return to the ward. Mu Yaja saw that she ignored him and didn't respond to his question. She only minded her own business and walked into the elevator. In a fit of anger, he strode over to the elevator. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, he reached out and forcefully blocked the doors from closing. His hand was viciously caught between the doors. Yun Shusha was shocked, but she saw the elevator doors open again. The man strode in and stood in front of her with a condescending look on his face. "What do you mean?" She was baffled by his question. "What do you mean by what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. I asked you, why are you here? You ignored me and turned around to enter the elevator. What do you mean by that?" Mu Yaja was enraged by her indifference. When the elevator doors closed, he took a step forward and forced her into a corner. Yun Shusha wasn't shocked or angry. Her face was calm as if her heart had died. Instead of answering, she asked, "Am I not supposed to be here? Or am I interrupting you flirting with another woman? If that's the case, then I'm really sorry." Her sarcastic tone caused the man's face to instantly turn cold. "Flirting? What are you thinking about all day long? Flirting?" Song Enya was his cousin. It was just a hug between siblings, so how could she call it flirting? If they weren't in public, he really wanted to teach this woman a lesson. Yun Shusha said indifferently, "I don't want to know anything. Who she is, what's your relationship, and what you're doing, I'm not interested." Her cold words were so harsh to the ears. What did he mean by she wasn't interested in knowing? What did she know? What did he know? Mu Yaja didn't know why she suddenly went crazy. He suddenly thought of something and the corners of his mouth curled up in a mischievous arc. He asked, "Jealous?" "No. Why would I be jealous?" She calmly denied. Mu Yaja's smile froze and his face darkened. Her nonchalant attitude made him really unhappy. "Then what are you angry about? Or, in your eyes, am I not worthy of your trust?" Looking at him, she was reminded of Xiao Chen's sad face and the frightening scene that happened at the amusement park today. She thought of how the Ferris wheel had malfunctioned and how the two children had almost met with an accident. Then, she recalled the scene of Song Enya and Mu Yaja hugging. Now that she looked at his face again, she suddenly felt that the scene just now was too glaring. She felt a little sour in her heart. Today is Xiao Ichen's birthday. Even if there's a misunderstanding between father and son, should he just leave the child alone at the amusement park? If this is a punishment, don't you think it's too much? Chapter 471. How could he not know that something had happened to Xiao Ichen? He was Mu Ichen's father. At that thought, Yun Shusha felt a chill run down her spine. I originally thought that you were a responsible father, she suddenly said. Mu Yaja was stunned. Her strange words had caught him off guard. She continued coldly, I don't know what position Xiao Ichen has in your heart, but I'm very disappointed in you. Her words had infuriated him. What did she mean by accusing him without distinguishing between right and wrong? Was it because he had spoiled her too much that she had become arrogant because of that? Woman, have I indulged you too much? Although Mu Yaja tried his best to control himself, he still couldn't stop himself from grabbing her shoulders tightly. His fingers tightened around her shoulders. Her words had undoubtedly offended him, so he sneered, You have no right to judge what kind of father I am. No right. Yun Shusha stared at him in a daze for a long time. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, and she suddenly mocked him. This mocking remark was his excessive concern for her. Yes, she had no right. He was right. What right did she have to criticize him? 6 years ago, she was the one who gave up Xiao Ichen's custody, wasn't she? She wasn't a good mother to begin with. She was the one who gave up her child's custody. Therefore, what right did she have to criticize Mu Yaja for being irresponsible? She had no right to criticize him. She really had no right to do so. Even so, when she thought of Xiao Ichen's heart-wrenching disappointed expression, her heart ached. I have no right. Then do you have the right? Yun Shusha gritted her teeth and said, I know that I don't have custody of Xiao Ichen. In name, I'm not Xiao Ichen's mother. I was the one who gave up my child's custody, but Mu Yaja, Xiao Ichen is also my flesh and blood. I won't cause you any trouble regarding his custody. I'm just disappointed that when Xiao Ichen got into trouble, where were you? Xiao Ichen got into trouble? What happened? Mu Yaja's heart skipped a beat. He was confused. What happened to him? Don't you think it's too late for you to ask now? She said bitterly, if you don't know how to take care of him, I can take care of him. The child was still young and insensible. Of all the things he should do, shouldn't the father and son communicate properly? Even if there's a huge misunderstanding, there's nothing that's not clear. Is there a need to leave him there alone? The more she thought about it, the more furious she became. I don't know whether your heart is warm or not, she said, questioning him. Today is the child's birthday, but what did you do? Mu Yaja only felt frustrated. This stupid woman was condemning him righteously. He didn't care, but he cared about what happened to Xiao Ichen, but she didn't say anything. Wasn't the child in the amusement park? What could have happened? He had arranged for him to receive training in the special forces since he was young. Whether it was survival in the wild or various subjects, Xiao Ichen's results were amazing. That was why he was relieved to leave him alone in the amusement park. Didn't he want to play? Then what would happen if he let the child have fun in the amusement park? Chapter 472. Yun Shusha sneered. You said that I don't have the right to ask, then let me ask you, what am I in your heart? What right do I have? Even if I don't even have the right to ask, what am I in your eyes? You can summon me at your beck and call. You can tease me when you're in a good mood, and humiliate me when you're in a bad mood, right? Mu Yaja said coldly, shut up. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as it pierced her body. He felt that she was being too presumptuous with her words. Was there a need for her to make such guesses about what he thought of her? Yun Shusha's heart turned even colder after being yelled at by him. I originally thought that you'd be cold to everyone, but, halfway through her words, she recalled the doting and indulgent side of this man toward Song Enya, and a part of her heart suddenly collapsed. She suddenly felt a little ashamed. Towards this man, she actually had a damnable heart. Now that her heart had given up, It was all over. I'm sorry, I was thinking too much. The elevator doors opened when it reached her floor. She turned around and left without looking back. Back in the ward, she began to pack her things. Yo-Yo could not help feeling puzzled when he saw her pale face. Mommy, what's wrong? Why were you gone for so long? Shusha did not want him to see the loss of composure on her face as she packed her things with her back facing him. She was very upset and felt a stabbing pain in her heart. Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen looked at each other, completely clueless about what had happened. Yo-Yo did not have a lot of things, only a small backpack and some personal belongings. Shusha walked to Yo-Yo's bed and said, "Yo-Yo, let me take you home." Yo-Yo nodded. Xiao Chen sat up nervously when he heard this. He looked at Shusha, who had a strange expression on her face, and asked uneasily, Are you leaving? He could not bear to leave her. He should have called his daddy when he was admitted to the hospital. However, for some reason, he did not want to call him. There was anger in it, but more than that, he wanted to spend more time with her. Seeing that she was about to leave, he suddenly felt a little flustered. What? What about me? Muyaja had already entered the ward. Just as he stepped into the ward, he saw the little lads with different injuries on the two beds. His face sank, and he frowned. When he saw Muyaja's call, he opened his mouth and wanted to call him, Daddy's daddies, but when the word, he wanted to call. He did not want to talk. There were some things to this day. It was supposed to be a happy birthday, but now it was like this. He was angry, so he didn't want to talk to him. What's going on? Muyaja asked after a moment of shock too. Xiao Chen ignored him, too. Yun Tianyu looked at Yun Shusha's expression and then at the man. He was sensitive enough to know that this man must have angered his mommy again, so he ignored him even more. He gave Muyaja a bad review in his heart. Lousy. People who make mommy angry are the worst. Unforgivable. Yun Shusha decided to leave with Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo's injuries were not serious. As his elder brother, Xiao Chen had always been responsible for protecting him, so his injuries were not serious. Chapter 473. Although this child had never called her mommy, that sense of closeness was irreplaceable by the word mommy. Feeling helpless, Yun Shusha walked to his bedside and said gently, "Chen, Mom. Auntie is leaving. You have to be well, okay?" Little Chen's heart ached. He opened his mouth, wanting to persuade her to stay, but no matter what, he could not bring himself to do so. He felt that he had no say in this. Xiao Chen lowered his head dejectedly. His eyes were filled with reluctance, sadness, and even attachment. However, the little guy was afraid that Yun Shusha would make things difficult for him, so he hid it well. From start to finish, he did not say anything. Yun Shusha's heart ached when she saw him in such a despondent state. She wanted to reach out and caress his face, but Muyaja was present. Recalling his words earlier, her heart turned cold. Thus, she retracted her hand, picked up Yo-Yo, and left. When he brushed past Muyaja, Yun Tianyu looked at Muyaja with chilling eyes. Muyaja did not turn back to ask him to stay. When he walked to the bedside, he saw Xiao Chen staring blankly at Yun Shusha's departure. For a moment, he was so sad that he almost suffocated. Seeing the mother and son disappear from the door of the ward, he couldn't help but flip over and get off the bed. He didn't care about his injured hand and stumbled to the door. But at this moment, he stopped in his tracks. Leaning against the door, he watched Yun Shusha and Yun Tianyu enter the elevator. When the elevator door closed, it was as if the sky had collapsed. Xiao Chen mumbled, "Mommy." Tears fell from his eyes in a daze. He kept feeling that her departure had left a huge hole in his heart that couldn't be filled no matter how hard he tried. Muyaja went to the door and picked him up. Looking at his bandaged arm, he raised his eyebrows slightly and asked in a deep voice, "What happened to your hand?" He didn't know what had happened today. He thought that the children were playing in the amusement park and the machine had malfunctioned. However, little Chen turned his head away, not wanting to bother with him. She felt a little guilty towards him. She shouldn't have left him alone in the amusement park. But at that time, the situation was urgent. At that time, he was a little worried about Song and Shi's injury. He was not in the mood to ask which child was at fault. These were all trivial matters. He was only anxious to send the child to the hospital. This was also his responsibility, wasn't it? But he stubbornly refused to leave. He tried to pick up Xiao Chen by force, but the child pushed him away and threw a tantrum. He simply left him there and let him play to his heart's content. When he was young, when he was willful, his father also punished him in the same way. Perhaps he didn't think that there was anything wrong with it, but if it hurt the child, it was an unintentional mistake. Now, he was very regretful. He felt guilty towards the child, so he took a step back, which was rare of him. It's Daddy's fault. It's Daddy's fault. I shouldn't have left you there. Are you willing to forgive Daddy? I'm not willing. Xiao Chen replied awkwardly and ignored him. His mind was filled with the sad expression on Yun Shusha's face when she left. He missed her a little. They had just parted not long ago, but he was already missing her. He missed her gently feeding him tiramisu and her warm embrace when she hugged him. His tears suddenly burst out uncontrollably. He rarely cried, in fact, he almost never cried. Chapter 474. On the way back to the Mu residence, Xiao Chen was so angry that he did not utter a word. He did not mention a word about what had happened that day. Mu Yaja tried to hug him a few times, but he avoided him without a word. Mu Yaja tried coaxing and asking, but the little lad refused to fall for his tricks. Neither soft nor hard methods worked on him. He was at his wit's end. If he did not answer, he would find out the truth himself. In fact, Yun Tianyu and Xiao Chen had reached an agreement to keep what had happened that day a secret. Yun Tianyu had repeatedly told him not to tell anyone about it, not even Mu Yaja. Little Chen obeyed his father's words and kept this matter a secret. Even if Mu Yaja wanted to find out the truth, he should not think about who owned Fairy Tale Valley. Even if he wanted to interfere, would Yun Tianyu give him the chance to do so? He wanted to find out the truth himself. However, this was a story for another day. When Mu Yaja and Xiao Chen reached home, the team of private doctors was already waiting for them at the door. The car door opened, and Mu Yaja carried Xiao Chen out of the car. The doctors immediately greeted them respectfully. Mu Wanru and Mu Sheng had also returned to the Mu residence. Seeing that Xiao Chen was injured, Mu Sheng turned pale with fright and immediately went forward to ask about his well-being. However, Xiao Chen was not in the mood and did not want to say much. He only said, "I'm tired." He was then escorted back to his room for an injection and an 4 drip. Mu Wanru also asked about what had happened, but Mu Yaja returned to his study room and buried himself in the company's planning documents. She was at her wit's end. When she heard from the servants that Mu Yaja had brought Xiao Chen to the amusement park, she felt a little suffocated. Late at night, Mu Wanru deliberately walked to the back garden and picked up the phone. A man's dejected voice came from the other end. "Miss Mu, I'm sorry. The mission failed." "What?" This was the first thing she received when she picked up the call. Mu Wanru gritted her teeth in exasperation but quickly suppressed her anger. "Where is he?" There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. Mu Wanru said irritably, "Damn it, are you all trash? You can't even handle a 6-year-old child? Sorry to disappoint you. Why are you on the phone with me? Where is he?" Mu Wanru asked coldly. There was another long period of silence on the other end. Suddenly, he said, "He's been caught." "What?" Mu Wanru cried out in shock. An inexplicable panic quickly spread in her heart. In a remote underground warehouse on the outskirts of Beijing. Li Hanlin unlocked the chains and Yun Tianyu followed closely behind him. Just as they stepped through the door, they vaguely heard a hoarse roar. Inside the warehouse, a man was chained to a wall pillar with his hands tied behind his back. His clothes were tattered, and there were many whip marks on them. He was trembling from the excruciating pain. His body was already riddled with scars and his face was covered in blood. It was hard to distinguish his facial features, but one could vaguely make out a pair of huge eyes that were staring in despair. The man in the suit raised the whip in his hand and continued to whip him. The man was in so much pain that he was barely breathing. He couldn't even make a complete and coherent sound. Chapter 475. Under such a brutal interrogation, the man's mouth was still sealed tightly, and he didn't spit out half a truth. Under the dim light, Yun Tianyu slowly walked to him and sized him up. Finally, he sat down on the chair Li Hanlin had brought over. He sat leisurely with his legs elegantly crossed. His thin body sank into the sofa leisurely. His delicate face was cold and indifferent. Even though he was still a child, no one could ignore the chilling aura emanating from his body. Between his brows, there was a sharp and intimidating aura. Although it was restrained, it could not hide the untamed edge as if it were born from darkness. The whipping continued. Without his command, no one would stop. At this moment, the warehouse was dark and filled with a murderous aura. Yun Tianyu lowered his eyelashes. His pair of beautiful yet cold eyes did not look at the man. He was still in his own world. However, no matter how tragically the man was being whipped, Yun Tianyu's brows remained calm and unmoved. Gradually, the man's voice stopped. Li Hanlin slowly walked to his side and whispered, "Director Yun, this man is not making any sound." Yun Tianyu calmly raised his eyes and looked at the unconscious man with cold eyes. He asked coldly, "Is he dead?" "No. He just fainted from the pain." "Oh." He calmly nodded his head. His thin lips curled into a treacherous and cold-blooded arc. "Wake him up." "Yes." Li Hanlin bowed and ordered his men to bring over a bucket of salt water. Moments later, the poor man, who had finally fainted, was splashed with a bucket of salt water. The pain woke him up again. The torture continued. "Just kill me. Just kill me." Yun Tianyu turned a deaf ear to the man's pleas. It was as if what was happening before him had nothing to do with him. He did not even bother to look at the man. He did not say a word until the man fainted again. Li Hanlin walked to his side and was about to ask him when he heard Yun Tianyu say, "Put him on the floor." "Okay." Li Hanlin placed him on the ground. Yun Tianyu slowly got up and walked to the man. He kicked him with the tip of his foot. Seeing that the man had indeed fainted, he could not help but frown. "Why are you so stubborn? Looks like he's a professionally trained killer." He's very tight-lipped. "I've interrogated him for so long and used so many methods, but I still couldn't pry his mouth open." Yun Tianyu glanced at the man's face and coldly said, "It's him." You injured my brother's hand because of you." Yun Tianyu's lips curled into a sinister smile. "You're not going to tell me, are you? All right, I'll play with him." With that, he ordered coldly, "Fix his limbs to the wall." "The wall? How do you fix it?" The men at the side were puzzled. The wall was bare and there was no fixed place. How could he tie her up? Giving him a sidelong glance, Yun Tianyu walked over and took out a sharp dagger from his waist. "Use this." Everyone shuddered. What he meant was to use the dagger to pin the man's limbs to the wall. What a ruthless method. It was truly creepy for a child to think of such a torturous method. Chapter 476. This abandoned warehouse was mostly abandoned, but the tools used for construction were still there. Very quickly, a hammer was brought over. A few men in suits helped the unconscious man up, stabilized him against the wall, spread out his limbs, aimed the nails at his wrists and ankles, and exerted force. A loud bang was heard. The man woke up again from the excruciating pain, but this time, his eyes were wide open. The bone-piercing pain in his limbs caused blood to gush out of his body. His face was so red that it looked like it was about to drip blood, and his veins were about to burst. If one did not experience this pain personally, they would never understand the cruelty of it. The man struggled in a frenzy, and his voice was almost hoarse from screaming. Yun Tianyu gave him a look, and Li Hanlin immediately ordered someone to pour a bucket of cold water on him. In an instant, the man calmed down a little. He raised his head in a sorry state, only to see a delicate-looking child standing in front of him. He coldly said, "I can tell you that you will die today." The man sneered. Die? What was there to be afraid of? When he accepted this assassination mission, he was already prepared to commit suicide if he failed. Yun Tianyu seemed to have guessed his resolve, so he coolly said, "You can either die a quick death or be played to death by me. Which one do you choose?" "Die a quick death." The man didn't even think about it as he gritted his teeth and said. Yun Tianyu smiled coldly. "All right, I can satisfy you. However, you have to tell me who ordered you to do this and who is your target. Mitch. The man seemed to be mocking his naivety, as if he did not care about this child at all. He was a professionally trained assassin. Assassins accepted missions and received bounties. No matter what, they would never betray their employers. He only fell into their hands because of a miscalculation today. Seeing that he was stubborn and unwilling to reveal everything, Yoon Tianyu took a piece of black cloth from Li Hanlin's hand and nonchalantly said, "Oh, okay. I'll play with you, then." His laughter was still childish and had a hint of a child's childishness. It was soft and cute. However, every sentence and every word that came out of his mouth made people tremble with fear. Gag his mouth. Li Hanlin immediately ordered someone to gag his mouth. He took a container from Li Hanlin. Inside the container were 10 finely crafted darts. He took out a dart and asked coldly, "Who ordered you to do this?" The man bit his lip hard and refused to say anything. Yoon Tianyu smiled and threw the dart. He was good at darts. Because of his health, he rarely went out since he was young. When he was at home and had nothing to do, he liked to play some games. This dart was one of them. However, with his eyes blindfolded, it was hard to tell if the darts would be accurate. Kai. A muffled sound was heard. The dart went straight into the man's abdomen. The man groaned and tried to hold it in. However, in less than half a second, the expression on his face quickly cracked because of the indescribable pain. He suffocated for a moment, and his entire body convulsed. He was utterly defeated. These darts were no ordinary darts. The steel tip of the dart was stained with concentrated sulfuric acid. Chapter 477. Some of his wounds were already dripping with blood mixed with salt water. Yoon Tianyu's dart had accurately pierced a wound on his abdomen. The tip of the needle was short, so the wound was not deep enough to be fatal. However, the chemical reaction of the sulfuric acid and salt water corroded the wound, causing it to emit a wisp of smoke. Only he could experience this feeling now. When some kind of pain passed, perhaps even the screams stopped. Yoon Tianyu furrowed his brows and asked regretfully, "Oh, my. Did I hit the target?" "Yes, you did," Li Hanlin reminded him. A cute and charming smile appeared on Yoon Tianyu's face. With that, he received another dart. Yoon Tianyu gestured, and the second dart was about to be thrown. "Woo-woo. Woo-woo. Don't." The man immediately begged for his assistant's help in a muffled voice. Yoon Tianyu had just thrown a dart, yet the man was so scared that he wet his pants. It seemed that he was afraid. After all, this pain was not something an ordinary person could endure. Even if he was a seasoned killer who had lived his life on the edge of a knife, he was never afraid. Death. He was never afraid of death. Now, he was scared out of his wits by this 6-year-old child's means. What a joke. Was this really a 6-year-old child? The man's eyelids trembled as he struggled to open them. His vision was blurred by the blood flowing from his forehead. He blinked his eyes hard and tried to regain his vision. Finally, he could see the child's face clearly. The child wasn't tall. He wore a snow-white shirt, black overalls, and a pair of British boots. His black hair was neat, and his skin was smooth and creamy. On his snow-white face, a pair of beautiful and deep eyes were covered, but one could vaguely see that the corners of his eyes were slightly curved, and he was smiling. He had a pretty nose, cute lips, and pink and tender cheeks. His body still had the smell of milk, and he was delicate. However, his body exuded a bone-chilling aura that made one's hair stand on end. Even though his lips were curled up and his face was clearly smiling, it made people feel a sinister feeling in their hearts and made them shudder. Was this child really only 6 years old? He did not believe it. Could a 6-year-old child think of such terrible means to torture someone? What is he saying? Yoon Tianyu raised his eyebrows slightly. Li Hanlin gave him a look and immediately ordered someone to remove the cloth from his mouth. Once it was removed, the man begged for mercy. "Give me a quick death. Stop it. Don't. Do you think I'll stop just because you tell me to?" Yoon Tianyu smiled innocently and tilted his head. His voice was tender, clear, and very pleasant to the ears. His words made one's heart shudder. The man's face turned white. "I'm just an assassin. I'm paid to do this, that's all. I'm just a child. I need someone to play with me. Why don't you play with me? Yun Tianyu gave her an elegant smile. As he spoke, he raised his wrist again. The dart needle in his hand shone with a cold light. Don't. I'll tell you. Don't. You'll confess. Younes, SSS, SSSSS, SSSSS. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. I only beg you to give me a quick death. Chapter 478. Yun Tianyu's lips curled into a sinister and disdainful smile. Let me tell you, I may be able to find out even if you don't tell me. Now that you've provoked me, you'll have to bear the consequences. Just as he finished speaking, his eyes flashed with ruthlessness. With a swift wave of his hand, he threw the dart in his hand and it pierced the man's thigh. The sulfuric acid on the tip of the needle quickly corroded the man's skin to the point where his bones were visible. The man convulsed violently as if he had been electrocuted. He struggled madly. Swish. Another dart was thrown, and it accurately pierced his eye. Puff. Warm blood splattered out. A fiery and intense glaring sensation hit him. This time, the man was completely unable to make a sound. He only convulsed like he was having a spasm. Then, he let out a heart-wrenching scream. Li Hanlin, who was standing at the side, also found this scene to be extremely horrifying. He lowered his head to look at Yun Tianyu and asked with a complicated expression, Director Yun, why don't you let your daddy settle this matter? Agent Li, what do you mean by that? Yun Tianyu slowly retorted. This is my matter, he doesn't need to settle it. But, this will dirty your hands. Li Hanlin could not help feeling a little hurt. A 6-year-old child should be pure white, shouldn't he? He should not be tainted by such things, should he? Yun Tianyu's gaze was slightly distracted. Dirty hair, he sneered. His laughter was light but deep. In order to protect Mommy, even if my hands are stained with blood, I won't hesitate. Li Hanlin was so shocked that he could not recover his senses for a long time. This sentence was bold enough. At this moment, Li Hanlin was truly impressed by him from the bottom of his heart. He did not know what kind of childhood had nurtured such a calm, courageous, and black-bellied child. On one side, he was innocent and adorable. On the other, he was dark and ruthless. He did not have the weakness and delicateness that a child should have. A normal child would be scared out of his wits if something like this happened, but he quickly regained his composure and even personally interrogated the assassin, torturing him until he begged for death. How did such a black-bellied method come about? He was very much like his father. That Mu Yaja was also a ruthless person. Could it really be hereditary? Yun Tianyu elegantly removed the black cloth covering his eyes. With great satisfaction, he took a few steps toward the man, who was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Does it hurt? Cough, cough. Blood gushed up, and the man coughed out a mouthful of blood. He could no longer reply. That's right. The more he hurt, the more satisfied Yun Tianyu was, the more satisfied he became. He thought of his mother's worried face. Then, he thought about how Mu Chen had been injured in order to protect him. This pain was nothing. These 3 darts were neither too much nor too little. On behalf of Mommy and Mu Chen, they were returning them to him. You can say it now. The man trembled as he raised his head and looked at him with misty eyes. Perhaps he was in so much pain that his mind was muddled. His lips didn't move for a long time. The scariest thing for a person was to greet death helplessly. What was scarier than this was to suffer a fate worse than death. He had been in the dark for so many years, and it was not that he had never seen people with ruthless means. In terms of ruthlessness, he had never been convinced by anyone. Yun Tianyu, however, was the first person to make him feel fear from the bottom of his heart. How was this a child? Chapter 479. On the surface, he looked as innocent as an angel. In reality, he was scarier than the devil. Chem? Not going to speak. The boy frowned, dissatisfied with his indifference. With both hands in his pants, he kicked the man's abdomen, causing the latter to yelp in pain. Are you mute now? I don't have the patience. This is your last chance, don't waste my time. I'll speak. Good boy. With his hands behind his back, he looked like an elegant and courteous gentleman as he casually asked, "Who exactly is your target?" 3 days ago, I received this mission. My employer paid me 2 million to assassinate 2 people. Which 2? One, Yun Shusha. The other, her son, Yun Tianyu, who is, he raised his head and stared at him with one eye. You. The boy's eyes changed slightly. Even though his face remained expressionless, his heart was in turmoil. He had previously guessed that he was the target and also vaguely guessed that his mother was one of the targets. Yun Tianyu clenched his fists tightly as a frightening and sharp murderous look flashed across his adorable face. Someone actually dared to hire an assassin to assassinate his mother. D***MNit. If not for luck, his mother's life would have been in danger that day. Thinking of this, his eyes flashed dangerously with murderous intent. Who's your employer? He. Ha ha ha. The man guffawed. I'm an assassin hired by someone. She pays me, and I carry out her orders. It's that simple. As for my employer's identity, I shouldn't reveal it. Still, I have to give it to you. I only ask that you give me a quick death and stop torturing me. All right. I agree to this condition of yours. Like a great gift, Yun Tianyu agreed to his request. Tell me, who is that person? The man's lips trembled as he answered, Mu Wanru. Mu Wanru? His brows furrowed slightly, clearly unfamiliar with this name. Li Hanlin was stunned for a moment before asking in surprise, "Why is it her? You know her?" He raised his head and narrowed his eyes dangerously. "Yes. I'll explain her identity to you in detail," Li Hanlin said. He turned to look at the man and asked coldly, "Why does she want to kill me?" "Of course, she didn't tell me the specific reason. I only know that she said that you are an evil creature and must be eliminated. Otherwise, it will threaten her position." The man endured the pain and opened his mouth with difficulty. "Have no choice but to get rid of them." Yun Tianyu quickly sensed that there was a hidden meaning in her words. The man coughed a few times, a trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. He slowly said, 6 years ago, Yun Shusha gave birth to 2 children for the Mu family. One of the children was confirmed to have died at birth. Therefore, everyone thought that the child no longer existed in this world. However, Grandpa Mu somehow got the news that the child was still alive. Naturally, he would want the child to return to the family. Yun Tianyu narrowed his eyes. He suddenly approached the man and interrogated, "What else do you know? Tell me everything." Chapter 480. He was an assassin. After accepting a mission, he would investigate the identity of the employer to the best of his ability. His information on Mu Wanru was limited, though. This was all he knew. Yun Tianyu blinked his eyes slowly and his lips curled into a strange smile. "Rest in peace." After saying that, he turned around without looking back and elegantly walked out of the warehouse. The moment the door closed, a gunshot was heard, breaking the tranquil night. When Li Hanlin came out, Yun Tianyu was sitting in the car, deep in thought. "Have you dealt with everything?" Li Hanlin nodded. "Yes. Let's go." In the car, Yun Tianyu sat leisurely in the back seat. He rested his chin elegantly on one hand and looked out the window indifferently. Li Hanlin, who was sitting beside him, gave him a rough analysis of Mu Wanru's information. However, due to the limited information he had, he could not deduce Mu Wanru's motive for hiring an assassin. Yun Tianyu only said, "It's not that simple. You have 5 days to investigate everything about Mu Wanru, no matter how big or small." "Understood," Li Hanlin replied swiftly. At the same time, in the Mu residence. In the study room, Mu Yaja sat at his desk and flipped through a thick stack of documents with his head lowered. Minute Yu, who was behind him, quietly waited and carefully observed his expression. "That's all? Sir, all the information on Laji Holdings is here." Mu Yaja raised his eyes and furrowed his brows slightly. Since Xiao Chen was injured, he naturally wanted to find out what had happened at the amusement park. However, due to the shooting incident, Fairy Tale Valley closed 3 hours in advance and evacuated all the visitors. They showed a perfect public relations attitude toward the media's interception of interviews, but they refused to talk about what had happened that day, even in the face of the public's doubts. The shooting incident was definitely a fatal blow to a public amusement park like the amusement park. Under normal circumstances, the media and the police would have already investigated this matter. But until now, the news about the shooting incident had been tightly sealed. Even the media could not intervene, so there were no reports. On the internet, some visitors posted on the forum. However, not long after these posts were posted, they were quickly deleted. Their accounts were also banned or even banned. Minute You investigated in secret, but due to Fairy Tale Valley's strict confidentiality measures, he didn't leak any information. He only vaguely found out that there was an attack on that day. As for the details of the incident, he did not know. Fairy Tale Valley was jointly controlled by Lagi Holdings and NE Group. This NE Group didn't have a strong background, but Cola Wisdom had a strong background. Lagi Holdings used to be a toy supplier on the verge of bankruptcy until it was acquired by Hurricane Group a year ago. The board of directors was replaced, shares were divided, and the CEO was replaced. In a short period of time, they had rapidly risen to become the world-class DreamWorks Animation, the world's largest toy supplier. Their industrial chains were spread across North America, Europe, and Asia. However, the CEO who held 60% of the company's shares had a mysterious background. A toy supplier might not be surprising. However, the Hurricane Group behind them was not to be trifled with. Chapter 481. They controlled half of the world's arms market and had close ties with various governments, mafia, and terrorist organizations. Their influence spanned across both the legal and illegal worlds, and they had an impressive mercenary corps. Perhaps, this was not an intuitive feeling. In other words, Hurricane Group controlled 50% of the world's arms market. Out of every 100 guns in the world, 50 of them were produced by this group. Every war in the world required the signing of tens of billions worth of arms orders from the Hurricane Group's armory. It could be said that this arms group was so powerful that everyone feared it. Disheng Financial Group was powerful, but its business was huge. The Muse did not rely solely on clean means to reach where they were today. The power struggles behind them were intertwined. At a certain point, if they wanted to expand their influence, they would naturally involve the underworld. There were two big families in the capital. One of them was the GU family, and the other, needless to say, was the Mu family. This Hurricane Group was not just a simple underworld organization, though. Every move of theirs could affect the world's situation. How could a toy company have a connection with such a huge arms group, though? I heard that the mysterious CEO of Lagi Holdings is very young. After Hurricane Group acquired the company, he took over the board of directors. I feel that his background is not simple. He should be related to Hurricane Group in countless ways. Minute You said from the side. Mu Yaja frowned as he fiddled with the pen in his hand. Minute You, who was standing at the side, said with lingering fear, if word of the shooting incident at the amusement park gets out, Lagi's reputation will surely suffer a devastating blow. Now that the news is sealed, even the police can't intervene. A toy company can't possibly have such power. Mu Yaja casually flipped through the documents. His gaze paused on a column of information. Lagi Holdings Board of Directors, Lee Hanlin. His gaze changed as the man's face flashed across his mind. This man had once appeared in Yun Tianyo's ward and claimed to be the principal of Yun Tianyo's kindergarten. He had also met him at Fairy Tale Valley that day. He was one of the higher-ups there. Back then, he was in a hurry and did not react in time. Now that he thought about it, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. Since he was one of the higher-ups in Lagi Holdings, then, Mu Yaja's gaze deepened. Who is this Lee Hanlin? He is the highest-ranking director of Lagi Holdings. He has a lot of power. Mu Yaja's heart skipped a beat as a suspicion suddenly arose in his heart. Even he couldn't help but be startled. He had some bold guesses about Yun Tianyo's identity. By the time Yun Tianyo reached home, the sky was already turning bright. It was close to dawn. He tiptoed around the entrance and carefully walked into the living room. Suddenly, the lights in the living room lit up. He was startled and stood rooted to the ground. Where did you go? On the sofa, Yun Shusha looked at him angrily, as if she hadn't slept all night. Her face was tired, and her eyes were bloodshot. Chapter 482. Waiting for you. Yoon Shusha's voice was frosty. His coquetry seemed to have lost its effect at this moment. She asked angrily, "Where did you go?" "I went for a walk in the courtyard." Yoon Tianyu pinched the corner of his shirt uneasily. Like a child who had done something wrong, he was at a loss for what to do and trembled with fear. In fact, he had indeed done something wrong. Yoon Shusha coldly said, "I went to the courtyard to look for you, but I couldn't find you." "Yo-yo, why did you lie to Mommy?" "Mommy?" He was startled. He did not know when she realized that he was not around, nor did he know how long she had been waiting for him. When he left the house, he was very careful not to make any noise. He only left the house after ensuring that Yoon Shusha was asleep. When did she find out? Yoon Shusha stared at him unblinkingly. Her face was filled with anger and sadness. Not long after he left, she woke up with a start. She got up and went to his room to check if he was sleeping well, but when she turned on the light, the person on the bed was gone. She was scared out of her wits, but she did not dare to alarm Yoon Yecheng. She searched everywhere by herself and even went to the security room to check the surveillance footage. Only then did she realize that he had gotten into a car and left. Seeing that he got into the car casually without being dragged or struggling, she ruled out the possibility of him being kidnapped. She also noted down the car plate number, but since it was late at night, she thought that, given Yo-Yo's character, he might be afraid that she would be worried and would return before dawn. Thus, she waited patiently in the living room. Yoon Tianyu looked at her guiltily. Seeing her haggard and uneasy face, he nervously explained, "Mommy, don't worry. Yo-Yo didn't do anything bad. Yo-Yo is just..." He could not think of a reasonable explanation no matter how hard he thought about it. It was impossible for him to tell her the truth, too. He didn't even dare to confess his current identity to his mother. How could he dare to talk about what happened tonight? "Yo-Yo, do you know that Mommy is worried about you?" Yoon Shusha saw that he couldn't speak and knew that he wouldn't tell her the truth. She crouched down and put her arms around his shoulders. She was still traumatized by the attack at the amusement park. She was really afraid that something would happen to Yo-Yo again. "Mommy, Yo-Yo made you worry. But Yo-Yo swears to you that Yo-Yo will never do anything to hurt Mommy. Mommy, don't worry. Trust in Yo-Yo, okay?" If he was given a little more time, he would definitely find a chance to clear things up with her. But now, he couldn't. Yoon Shusha looked at him. "Is that a promise?" "Yes. It's a deal. Today is the last time. There won't be a next time." Yoon Tianyu hugged Yoon Shusha's face and gave her a peck as he consoled her. "Mommy, Yo-Yo wants to keep what happened today a secret. I can't tell you. When the time is right, Yo-Yo will come clean with Mommy. Mommy, give Yo-Yo some time, okay?" Yoon Shusha was tickled by Yoon Tianyu's serious expression. How could he still say that the time was right? "All right. Mommy is relieved to see that you are safe and sound. But today is the last time. There won't be a next time," Yoon Shusha warned him unhappily. Chapter 483. After all, Yo-Yo was different from other children. He had his own way of thinking. Hence, she carried Yo-Yo into the bedroom. As usual, Yoon Shusha lay on the bed and read him a fairy tale. Yoon Tianyu snuggled softly in her arms and fell asleep peacefully as he listened to her gentle voice. Yoon Shusha specially applied for leave to accompany Yo-Yo for a few days. She also brought him and Yoon Yecheng on a vacation for a few days. It was peaceful for a few days. When she returned to the training class, Chin-ju informed her that she could successfully graduate early due to the movie schedule. The morning passed peacefully. It was not until noon that an uninvited guest arrived. It was Chen Xiaohua, whom she had met at the restaurant some time ago. In the office, Yoon Shusha saw him and subconsciously wanted to leave. Chen Xiaohua was not going to let her off so easily. He hurriedly blocked her way at the door with a pleading look on his face. Miss Yoon, please don't misunderstand. I'm not here to have any improper thoughts about you. It's just that I need your help with something. You have to help me." Yoon Shusha did not let down her guard as she eyed him warily. He knew that he must have left a bad impression on her previously, so he bowed deeply to apologize. "Miss Yoon, please forgive me for my rudeness and offense last time. I know that I'm in the wrong. I hope that you won't stoop to my level and won't stoop to my level. I'm very regretful after the incident. I'm a pervert, Anyway, I can only apologize to you for what happened last time. Also, I'll try my best to make it up to you. However, there's something that I need your help with. I don't understand what you mean. Before that, can I ask for your forgiveness? Qian Shaohua raised his head and looked at her with a face full of remorse. It looked like he was truly remorseful. Last time, she was still so arrogant. Why did she lower her head and beg for forgiveness this time? However, Yun Shusha didn't intend to argue with this kind of person, so she said, "Let bygones be bygones. I forgive you." "Thank you," Qian Shaohua said gratefully. Then, he told her the whole story. It turned out that some time ago, Qian Shaohua had taken a fancy to a piece of land in the new district, so he bought it and planned to develop it into a high-class apartment building. The investments and what-not had already been settled. The reason he chose that place was because of Di Sheng. Not long ago, the real estate company under Disheng Financial Group had bought a large piece of land in the new district. Qian Shaohua had secretly asked around and found out that this piece of land was going to be a development project. He had heard that Mu Yaja was going to develop the new district into an economic district. Not only would he set up a new branch there, but he would also vigorously develop a green ecological garden. After that, he would cooperate with a famous tourism holding company in the capital to build a 5A grade amusement park. Upon hearing about Disheng Financial Group's move, many companies were tempted. The land in the new district started to be auctioned at high prices. Therefore, the remaining land was quickly divided up, and the price of the land continued to soar. Chapter 484. Soon after, schools, hospitals, cinemas, opera houses, stadiums, amusement parks, eco-parks, natural sceneries, supermarkets, and Wanqing department store would be built. Due to Disheng Financial Group's influence, the subway and public transport companies gave them the green light after they found out about it and opened up a few routes. Therefore, the originally remote suburbs suddenly became a bustling area. In the future, it might even become a commercial and financial center. Qian Shaohua was naturally a smart man. Seeing that Disheng valued this project so much, he rubbed his palms together and started working on it. The property prices had already skyrocketed before the market had even started. If nothing went wrong, he could make a lot of money from this project. Although he did not have much of a philosophy when it came to real estate, he had the keen sense of a businessman and a unique vision. He believed in Disheng's ability and vision, so he was waiting to make a fortune. However, because of this incident, Chairman Mu was unhappy and displeased. This was bad. Disheng Financial Group announced through the media that the planning of the new district was temporarily suspended, and all development projects were temporarily terminated. Disheng Financial Group's announcement caused the other investors to stop in their tracks. This was not a loss to Disheng. After all, Disheng was the one who bought the land. They could develop it whenever they wanted, regardless of whether it was sooner or later. Even if it was vacant for a year or two, Disheng would not care about the loss. However, it was different for Qian Shaohua. For the sake of this case, he had taken out all of his personal belongings, and even risked his own net worth to finance it. He thought that nothing would go wrong if he followed Disheng, and the profits would be enough to make a fortune. However, he did not expect that Disheng's project would be suspended just like that. His building project was already halfway done. If Disheng suspended the project for a few months, the loss would be acceptable. However, if it was suspended for a year or two, he would lose a lot of money. If Mu Yaja deliberately went against him, he would be reduced to bankruptcy. After all, the value of this area lay in Disheng's intention to develop it into a bustling new district. Without Disheng, the value of the property here would plummet. However, Qian Shaohua thought that Mu Yaja would not be so ruthless just for a woman, right? He calmed himself down and planned to check the news later. When Qian Shaohua found out that Disheng Financial Group was planning to develop this place into an industrial zone, he could not sit still any longer. Mu Yaja's move was too merciless and ruthless. Knowing that he was going to develop a residential area, why did he do this on purpose? If it were to be developed into an industrial park, It would be impossible for dishing to even think about it. However, if it were to be developed into an industrial park, Qian Xiaohua's development would only result in a huge loss. Who would buy a house next to an industrial park? Who would want to live in a place with such a high air pollution index? On the surface, it was not targeted. However, in reality, Mu Yaja's casual wave of his hand had completely pushed him into a dead end. Qian Xiaohua could not sit still any longer. He tried to go to Mu Yaja several times to plead for mercy, but Mu Yaja completely ignored him. Chapter 485. This time, Qian Xiaohua was panicking. What should he do? The project was still in progress. Every day that it was delayed was a loss. Yun Shusha was indifferent to his repeated pleas. She only said mildly, "If you're here to beg for my forgiveness, I can forgive you. But you want me to plead with Mu Yaja for you? That's impossible." "Why?" Qian Xiaohua exclaimed and probed carefully. "Could it be that Miss Yun thinks that I'm not sincere enough?" Yun Shusha said with a headache, "Mu Yaja and I don't have that kind of relationship. My words don't carry any weight with him. You think too highly of me." With that said, she was about to leave. However, Qian Xiaohua was so shocked that he hugged her. Seeing her cold and silent expression, he was so anxious that he was about to cry. He begged for mercy. "Ayo. Oh, my little grandaunt. You don't carry any weight in Chairman Mu's heart? You must be joking with me. Why did Chairman Mu force me into a corner? Isn't it because I have improper thoughts about you? Aya, I deserve to die for bringing this up. I deserve to die." Qian Xiaohua slapped himself and said, "Chairman Mu really cares about you. Believe me, as long as you say something, you can save me from the abyss of suffering. I beg you." "Boss Qian, there's no point in saying more. I don't think I have the ability to change Chairman Mu's mind." With that said, Yun Shusha walked around him and left. Qian Xiaohua stomped his feet anxiously behind her. Yun Shusha originally thought that after rejecting him, he would restrain himself. However, she didn't expect that Qian Xiaohua would follow behind her for 2 consecutive days. No matter where she went, he would always follow behind her like a shadow. On the way home, she saw a car following closely behind her in the rearview mirror. She didn't need to guess to know that Qian Xiaohua was following her. Yun Shusha was annoyed by him and got out of the car. The car behind them also stopped on the road. Qian Xiaohua got out of the car. Before Yun Shusha could say anything, he rushed in front of her and knelt down with a plop. Yun Shusha was stunned. Qian Xiaohua said solemnly, "Miss Yun, I beg you, I beg you. This is the last time. Please help me. As long as you plead with Chairman Mu for me, I won't pester you anymore no matter what the outcome is." Yun Shusha was also annoyed by his torture, so she said, "Okay, I promise you, but don't follow me anymore." Qian Xiaohua was so moved that he shed tears of gratitude. He wanted nothing more than to kneel on the ground and kowtow to her. Yun Shusha said helplessly, "Don't be like this, get up. I'm going home, so don't follow me anymore." It was already 8 o'clock when they reached home. The moment she opened the door, Yun Tianyu, who was reading a book on the sofa, happily welcomed her and threw himself into her arms. "Mommy, you're back. Yo-Yo has been waiting for you for a long time." Yun Shusha rubbed his head guiltily, unable to hide her tiredness. "I'm sorry, Yo-Yo. I came back a little late today." "You're wrong, Mommy comes back late every day." With that, he tiptoed and took the coat and bag from her. As he put them aside, he said, "Mommy, the food is ready, but it seems to have turned cold again. I'll go heat it up again, it'll be ready soon." After waiting for a long time, she still did not return. The food was reheated, but it still turned cold. Yun Shusha sat at the table and looked at the 3 dishes and 1 soup on the table. It was not a sumptuous meal, but it looked, smelled, and tasted good. She could not help feeling touched. Chapter 486. Yun Tianyu, who was sitting opposite her, propped his head in his hands and looked at her with satisfaction. "No, it's not. Yo-Yo is happy as long as Mommy thinks it's delicious. Yo-Yo's cooking is the best. It's even better than a 5-star chef." Yun Shusha gave him a thumbs up and was not stingy with her praises for her baby. Yo-Yo's pink and tender face revealed a hint of sweetness as he hurriedly urged, Mommy, hurry up and eat. What if the food gets cold again? Okay. Yoon Shusha picked up her bowl of rice and ate happily with the reheated food. Yoon Tianyu looked at her quietly. His eyes darted around before he suddenly lowered his voice and asked, Mommy, Yo-Yo has a question for you. Chem? That man from yesterday, the man Mommy said was your university professor. Who exactly is he? Yoon Shusha had just swallowed a mouthful of rice when she heard his question. She choked for a long time. Yo-Yo kindly pushed a bowl of soup in front of her. Yoon Shusha hurriedly gulped down a few mouthfuls. Yo-Yo, who was at the side, lamented helplessly, Mommy, your table manners are so ugly. Yo-Yo. Yoon Shusha glared at him resentfully. Are you saying that Mommy's table manners are ugly? Yes, not ladylike at all. Mommy, you can't do this outside, or else you'll scare others. Baby is already used to your table manners, so don't worry. Yo-Yo looked at her with her I can't do anything to you expression. What's so important about it? Yoon Shusha, on the other hand, did not think much of it. She was merely shocked by his words and choked on her words. Don't avoid the topic. Every time I ask you a question, you're always evasive. Mommy, don't coax me like a child, I'm not that stupid. Yoon Tianyu could tell at a glance that she was avoiding the topic. This time, he did not intend to let her off. When did I avoid the topic? Then, you tell me, who is that uncle? Yoon Tianyu, with an elegant smile on his face, unhurriedly asked this question, leaving her with no way out. Yoon Shusha sighed helplessly. She put down her bowl and chopsticks and looked up at him. I'm sorry, Mommy lied to Yo-Yo last time. He's not Mommy's university professor. Oh, I know. Yo-Yo raised her eyebrows. You know? Then last time you. Mommy, sometimes your IQ is really low. I was just playing along with you. Don't I look at myself in the mirror? Yo-Yo looked defeated. In other words, the little girl could tell that the man's facial features were similar to hers. Yoon Tianyu was long aware of his relationship with Mu Yaja. But now, he was only asking because he wanted his mommy to be honest with him. He didn't want her to hide anything from him. Yes. He is your daddy. Yoon Shusha cautiously said this. After saying this, she observed Yoon Tianyu's expression. Seeing that he was still calm and did not look surprised, she was a little surprised. Why don't you look surprised at all? Why should I be surprised? Yoon Tianyu held his head and calmly said, I also know that the uncle's name is Mu Yaja. His Disheng Financial Group's CEO. Also. Yo-Yo moved closer to her and nudged her waist with his small arm. This uncle likes you a lot. Chapter 487. You're just a child. What do you know about liking someone? Of course I know. Mommy, you're so out of date. You're already dating in primary school. You're already dating in primary school. Mommy, you're really getting on in years. You're about to be out of touch with this era. Getting on in years. These words were like an arrow that pierced her heart. Yoon Shusha stared at him dangerously. Do you think Mommy is old? Yo-Yo shrugged and looked at her with a magnanimous expression. Then, he patted her shoulder solemnly. Don't worry, Mommy. No matter how old you are, to the point where you don't have any teeth and your hair is white, Yo-Yo won't despise you. Yoon Shusha was a little touched when she heard this. She held his smiling face and kissed him twice. Good boy, don't despise Mommy. Mommy loves Yo-Yo the most. Yo-Yo suddenly hugged her shoulder. His childish voice was full of tenderness. Mommy, do you know? Yo-Yo is very possessive of Mommy. He doesn't want anyone to steal Mommy from Yo-Yo. However, if it's a man that Mommy likes, Yo-Yo only wants Mommy to be happy, regardless of Mommy's choice. That's enough. Even though he was still a little repulsed by Mu Yaja, he saw the sad expression on Mommy's face yesterday. It must be because of that man. He didn't know the reason, but he knew that if she didn't have feelings for someone, why would she be sad because of that person? Mommy clearly had feelings for him. Since that was the case, he wouldn't force his will on Yoon Shusha. No matter what choice she made, he would support her unconditionally. Because she was his favorite Mommy. Yoon Shusha's gaze softened. She hugged his shoulders and stroked his head. She smiled and said, Yo-Yo, you're such a good boy. No matter what, Yo-Yo, you must remember that Mommy will always love Yo-Yo the most. But Mommy, if anyone bullies you, you must tell Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo will bully them back. Yo-Yo raised her head and gently planted a kiss on her mommy's cheek. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a doting smile. Shusha's heart stirred. Sometimes, it really gave her an illusion. Although Yo-Yo was her son, he doted on her as much as anyone else. Yo-Yo, aren't you afraid of spoiling Mommy too much? Shusha asked with a smile. Yo-Yo's pink lips pursed in disapproval. What are you talking about? Isn't it natural for a son to dote on his mommy? When you grow up, people will definitely say that you're a mommy's boy. Let them say what they want. Yoon Tianyu snorted disdainfully with an arrogant look on his face. Do I, Yoon Tianyu, need to care about anyone's opinion? You're so full of yourself. Shusha tousled his silky hair. Yo-Yo nestled in his mother's embrace with a look of contentment. Shusha suddenly asked seriously, Yo-Yo, sometimes Mommy wonders whose genes you've inherited. He was clever and quick-witted. He was smart and warm, but sometimes he could be a little sharp-tongued. He was simply quick-witted. Yo-Yo answered matter-of-factly, of course, I've inherited it from my dearest Mommy. Mommy is so beautiful. Although she's dumb, she has Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo is smart. Chapter 488. Yo-Yo actually despises Mommy for being stupid. Mommy is so sad. Woo woo woo. Yo-Yo repeatedly begged for mercy. Aya, be gentler. Shusha refused to let him off and threatened, quickly praise Mommy for being smart. Mommy is so smart. What else? Mommy is a beautiful fairy. More. Mommy is the most gentle Mommy in the world. Yo-Yo cleverly praised her. Shusha finally let him off. She could not help poking his head with her finger. You're smart. Aya, Mommy, quickly eat. Yo-Yo, go collect the clothes. Yo-Yo urged. He then got off her body and ran to the balcony to collect the clothes. Shusha held her chopsticks in satisfaction. She sighed inwardly. With such a filial son at home, everything is fine. Thinking about it, she felt a little ashamed. Thus, after dinner, Shusha carried the bowls to the kitchen to wash them. Yo-Yo kept the clothes in the wardrobe and went to the kitchen. He obediently carried a stool over and stood beside Shusha. Mommy, let's wash them together. Okay. You're in charge of washing the dishes, and I'll be in charge of wiping them. We'll split the work. Okay. Thus, the mother-son pair chatted in the kitchen while washing the dishes. It was extremely comfortable. After washing the dishes, the two nestled on the sofa and watched TV for a while. Yoon Tianyu suddenly thought of the movie and asked curiously, Mommy, when will the movie you're acting in start shooting? The day after tomorrow. Shusha thought for a while. The opening ceremony will be held at Jinghua University. Yo-Yo, can I go? No, you have classes. Shusha rejected him without thinking. Woo. Mommy is bad. You still have school tomorrow. Let's sleep. Shusha turned off the TV and carried him into the room. She carried him to the bed. Yoon Tianyu's little face still had an aggrieved expression. His lips were pursed, and he was clearly unhappy. Darling, Mommy has to work. I'm afraid I can't take care of you. Mommy will be worried. Shusha said somewhat helplessly. All right. Then you can go to school obediently. Although Yo-Yo was still a little unwilling, there was nothing she could do. She slowly crawled under the blanket, looking depressed. He really wanted to accompany his mommy. Otherwise, he would feel uneasy. He thought that he should just confess everything to Mommy and not let her go to work. He could just let her stay at home and take care of her. Otherwise, when he went out to work, he would be looked down upon and ostracized. Even if he was wronged outside, he would never tell him. He would be worried. In a place like the entertainment industry, there was so much intrigue. How could he be at ease? However, when he thought about it, there were some things that he really did not know how to tell her. Thus, he swallowed this impulse. Shusha saw the disappointment on his face. She gently kissed his pouting lips and comforted him. Don't think too much. Good night, darling. Yo-Yo's face looked better at this. Good night, Mommy. Have a good dream. She turned off the lights and closed the door. Yoon Shusha returned to her room and lay on the bed. However, she could not fall asleep no matter how hard she tried. Her phone suddenly rang. Yoon Shusha picked it up and saw Mu Yaja's number on the screen. She was startled. She suddenly recalled the scene she had coincidentally seen at the hospital that day. Even now, her heart still felt stifled. Feeling vexed, she tapped the screen and hung up the call. Chapter 489. However, as if he was competing with her, her phone kept ringing. When she hung up, he would call again and again. She was thoroughly enraged. She picked up the call and asked angrily, "What exactly do you want? Come out." The man's voice was filled with anger after being hung up on more than 20 times. Yoon Shusha was perplexed and asked unhappily, "It's the middle of the night. Why are you acting crazy? I'm outside your house." Yoon Shusha was shocked. She walked to the window and saw an Aston Martin parked outside. Mu Yaja was holding his phone and leaning against the car with a cigarette in his mouth. The flickering sparks were particularly eye-catching in the night. From afar, the man's head was lowered, and his entire body exuded an inexplicable loneliness. She didn't know why, but today's man was no longer as high-spirited as he used to be. At this moment, he seemed somewhat depressed, which inexplicably pierced her heart. Yoon Shusha hung up the phone and returned to bed. This time, her phone didn't ring again, which made her confused. Could it be that he had left? Feeling inexplicably uneasy, she got out of bed and walked to the window. Lifting a corner of the curtains, she peered through the window, only to see that the man was still in the same position as before. His cigarette, however, had reached its end. He snuffed it out and lit another one. Tonight, he seemed to be inexplicably distracted. He smoked one cigarette after another, almost without stopping. Taking a deep puff of his cigarette, he raised his head and looked in her direction. Yoon Shusha put down the curtains and her heart was beating fast. After hesitating for a bit, she put on a coat and walked out. It was late at night, and the night wind was cold. She stood uneasily at the door. She gently gathered her clothes and looked at the man leaning against the front of the car. There was a long period of silence between them. After what seemed like a century, Yoon Shusha finally opened her mouth to speak. "Why are you here?" Mu Yaja stared at her face. His gaze was as deep as a torrent, but he still did not speak. "Don't say anything. I'm going back," Yoon Shusha said angrily. She turned around and was about to enter the house. "Stop right there." The man's voice came from behind. Yoon Shusha stopped, but she didn't turn around. Mu Yaja straightened his body, put out his cigarette and said, "Come here and give me a hug." Yoon Shusha's back stiffened. She turned around, but she didn't walk toward him. What did that mean? He had appeared at her doorstep out of nowhere and looked so fragile. Was he upset just to get a hug from her? "You, come here and give me a hug," Mu Yaja said again, but there was a hint of compromise. 5 minutes. Yoon Shusha hesitated for a long time, but she still walked over in the end. When she walked in front of him, Mu Yaja reached out and pulled her into his arms, hugging her fiercely. His arms kept tightening as if he wanted to melt her into his bones and blood. It almost suffocated her. Feeling a little uncomfortable, she struggled for a bit. The man's voice came from above her head. "Don't move, Mu Yaja." Chapter 490. Yoon Shusha looked up, only to see his handsome face closing in on hers. His thin lips sealed her mouth in an instant, and her protest was forcefully silence. Tonight, for some reason, he was a little out of control, like an injured beast. It was probably because today was the anniversary of Jiang Ishan's death. After leaving the cemetery, he had been feeling a little frustrated. At night, he had driven up the mountain to vent his emotions, but after leaving the mountain, he had driven the car here. When he came to his senses, the car had already stopped in front of her house, and the engine had been turned off. Only then did he realize that perhaps this woman had unknowingly invaded every corner of his thoughts. He wanted to see her, but his usual arrogance did not allow him to lower his head to a woman. For the past few days, he had forced himself to throw himself into the company's huge pile of cases. He did not want to think about her or have any distracting thoughts. However, every time he closed his eyes, her face would appear in his mind. There was no way to avoid it. He had been waiting for her to come to him and lower her head to him, but this woman seemed to have disappeared from his world without a trace. When he had driven the car here involuntarily, he had realized that he had lost. In the end, he still could not hold himself back and wanted to see her. As he thought of this, his eyes darkened. Before she could even react, a domineering kiss filled her entire mouth. Yoon Shusha was shocked. He kissed her fiercely and with so much force that it was as if he wanted to swallow her whole. His cold thin lips pressed tightly against hers, crushing her. He kissed her so hard that it hurt her. Taking advantage of this, he pried open her lips and kissed her even more deeply. Yoon Shusha struggled for a while and tried to push him away, but she could not resist the man's strength at all. The kiss was deep. It almost suffocated her. Just as she thought that she was going to faint, he raised his head and pinched her chin. Admiring her lips, which were swollen from being ravaged, he lifted her hair with his slender fingers. His gaze, however, froze. "Where's the earring?" Yoon Shusha's breathing quickened as she looked up. Seeing his gloomy and unhappy gaze, she said coldly, "Take it off." "Why did you pluck it?" Mu Yaja asked angrily. "Because I don't like it, I took it off." "Can't I?" Yoon Shusha felt that he was a little strange and turned to leave. Mu Yaja grabbed her arm and pulled her back. Yoon Shusha lost her balance and bumped into the car door. Mu Yaja followed closely behind her. His tall and big body covered hers, trapping her in this narrow space. Yoon Shusha looked up helplessly, only to see him lowering his head and glaring at her. The anger in his eyes almost stabbed her. "What do you want? Are you still angry?" Mu Yaja suddenly asked. Yoon Shusha was distracted for a moment and turned her face away from him. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Song Enya," Mu Yaja suddenly said, "her name is Song Enya, and she's my cousin. So, there's nothing between us. If you're misunderstanding this, then I'll tell you now that there's no need." Chapter 491. It was only because she resembled his mother's face that he doted on her so much. If she minded because of this, then there was no need for her to do so. Yoon Shusha was stunned for a moment. Was this man trying to explain things to her? Cousin, though? Are they cousins? Why did she see the adoration in Song Enya's eyes when she looked at him, though? It was the kind of adoration that only a woman would show to a man she admired. He claimed that they were cousins, but did he not know what this so-called cousin of his had in mind for him? Yoon Shusha sneered. "Why should I be angry?" Her disdainful attitude had infuriated him. Suppressing his urge to flare up, Mu Yaja asked in a low voice, "Do you really mind this?" Yoon Shusha kept quiet. Mu Yaja said, "If you mind, then I'll keep my distance from her." He was making a huge concession. Yoon Shusha's lips twitched, but she said slowly, "I don't have the right for you to do that for me." "You do." Mu Yaja corrected her angrily. "I don't. D***it. He grabbed her chin, lowered his head, and fiercely bit her lips. He loved and hated this woman at the same time. He hated her for acting on her own initiative. What did she mean by not having the right? If he said she had it, then she had it. Ah! Yoon Shusha pushed his chest in pain, only to hear the man say angrily, "If I say you have the right, then you have the right." Mu Yaja, aren't you being too self-righteous? Do you think I really mind this? Yoon Shusha's eyes were cold and flickering. "Fine. Even if I mind, what right do I have? Then tell me, what right do I have?" The man looked at her silently. Yoon Shusha sneered. "What right do I have to mind this? You're my woman. That's your right," Mu Yaja announced domineeringly. Yoon Shusha was stunned for a moment, then she suddenly asked in amusement, "I'm your woman. Do you dare to announce our relationship to the whole world?" Mu Yaja's gaze froze, and his face instantly sank. Yoon Shusha looked at his stunned expression and her heart sank. See, the relationship between them can't be exposed at all. What she wanted was a stable life and a happy marriage. She didn't want something like this to be shameful. She was not a third party, and she would not be a third party. Even if he didn't have any feelings for his fiancée, she wouldn't tolerate playing the role of a backstabber. Thinking of this, she coldly tugged at the corner of her lips. "Look, you can't even do this. Mu Yaja, please know your place and don't provoke me again. If that's what you want. Mu Yaja paused, then his lips curled into an evil and arrogant smile. Yun Shisha, I'll make you my real woman. Yun Shisha was stunned, and her eyes widened in astonishment. It was a little unbelievable. I'll announce to the whole world that you're Mu Yaja's woman. Wait until the time is right. Now that the Mu family's internal strife and power struggles were intertwined, old Master Mu's health was deteriorating, and the change of power in the Mu family was imminent. She was afraid that some people could no longer hold back and were ready to make a move. Chapter 492. Wait until he becomes the real head of the Mu Jia. Wait until he takes over the Mu Jia's position. Wait until he eradicates the remaining forces of the Mu Jia. Wait until that day, he will announce to the world that Yun Shisha is his woman. This is his promise to her. Does he mean that he will give her a home? Yun Shisha's nose suddenly turned sour. She always felt that happiness was somewhat unattainable. Even in the eyes of ordinary people, having a complete family, in her eyes, was such a distant thing. But this man told her that one day, she will be his real woman. Famous and famous. Is that what he meant? Will there be such a day? Yun Shisha still didn't believe it. Mu Yaja somewhat angrily said, Woman, are you doubting me? Yun Shisha looked at him with a somewhat empty gaze. Her face instantly lost all expression. Looking at her, Mu Yaja's heart seemed to be ruthlessly stabbed by a needle. Mu Yaja, answer me, do you like me? Yun Shisha stared at his face and asked word by word. Mu Yaja was silent for a moment. He was a little unclear about the definition of like. He had never had a woman before, and no matter how one looked at it, Yun Shisha was his first woman. He had always been arrogant and casual, like a free wind, never willing to be bound. But ever since this woman broke into his world, all the order seemed to have collapsed in an instant. He also began to get used to her warmth when he woke up. Without her, he felt a little unaccustomed. For her, he was so possessive. He didn't like other men to look at her, touch her, and only wanted her to belong to him. He also missed her when she wasn't by his side. He missed her like a madman. He missed her eyes, her tightly knitted brows when she was pouting coquettishly. He missed her shy appearance under his body. What he missed even more was her sleeping peacefully in his arms. If this meant that he liked her, then so be it. However, to him, these two words were too embarrassing to say out loud. Thus, he lowered his head and gave her a gentle kiss as a response. This kiss was unlike the previous stormy kiss. The man only gently touched her lips, like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. It was as if she was the most precious treasure in the world, carefully held in the palm of his hand. Gradually, Yun Shisha also slowly responded to his kiss. Her arms slowly wrapped around his shoulders. Although she was a little clumsy, she took the initiative to respond. Mu Yaja was very satisfied. He hugged her tightly and deepened the kiss. The two people who were immersed in it did not realize that behind them, there was a thin figure standing behind a window. Yun Tianyu, in his pajamas, stood sideways in front of the window. He lifted a corner of the curtain and peeped at the charming and gentle scene outside. A complicated expression surfaced on his delicate and tender face. Although he was young and didn't understand the love between adults, he could feel that his stupid mommy was in love. He could feel his mommy's love for this man. A trace of loneliness flashed across his eyes, followed by a slight tug at the corner of his mouth. His small hands clenched into fists and lightly thumped his aching chest. If, one day, his mommy told him that she loved this man deeply, then he would call him daddy without hesitation. Chapter 493. Back in bed, Yun Tianyu crawled under the covers and picked up a small and exquisite photo frame from the bedside table. It was a photo of him and his mommy at the amusement park a few days ago. Holding the photo close to his chest, he fell asleep quietly. The next morning, when Yun Shisha woke up, she washed up and walked to the living room. Yun Tianyu had already laid out breakfast on the dining table. Her father immediately greeted her. Shisha, good morning. Dad, good morning. Yo-Yo, good morning. Mommy, quickly have your breakfast. Yo-Yo pulled out a chair for her and, with a gentlemanly bow, invited her to take a seat. Yoon Shusha was tickled by his gentlemanly gesture and sat down. Yoon Tianyu sat beside her and smilingly asked, "Mommy, did you sleep well last night?" Yoon Shusha was stunned. Recalling the kiss last night, she blushed and replied, "Yes, I had a good dream." Yo-Yo smiled. "That's great. Yo-Yo, though, had a bad dream." "Chem? Nothing. Stupid mommy, quickly have your breakfast. This is a heart-shaped poached egg that Yo-Yo made for you." With that, he placed a heart-shaped poached egg in front of her. This was meticulously prepared by Yo-Yo. "Have you had your breakfast? Stupid mommy, what time is it now? I'm going to report to kindergarten," Yoon Tianyu complained. Little Munchin's face was full of misery at the thought of having to face those lively and chirpy kids in the kindergarten again. He was worried to death. He felt that his IQ would plummet if he stayed in kindergarten for a few more years. Yoon Yecheng told Yoon Shusha, "Shusha, quickly go to the office after breakfast. I'll send Yo-Yo to kindergarten." "Okay. Be careful on the road." He then left with Yo-Yo. Not long ago, Yoon Shusha bought him a car. After the company's bankruptcy, Yoon Yecheng had not driven a car for a few years. After a few days of getting used to it, he was more or less familiar with it. When the car slowly drove out of the villa, a black car followed closely behind. Ever since the incident at the amusement park, Lee Hanlin had specially assigned a personal bodyguard to watch over Yoon Tianyu 24/7. After Yoon Shusha finished her breakfast, she rushed to the company. In the company, Lin Fengtian sat in his office. A few assistant directors stood by the side, trembling in fear and sweating profusely. Qin Ju sat on the sofa, absent-mindedly grinding his nails. At this moment, the huge office was shrouded in a layer of low pressure. How am I supposed to do that?" Lin Fengtian slammed his palm on the table. There was an order on the table. What appeared on the screen was a series of rules and regulations regarding Yoon Shusha's movie. No kissing scenes. No sex scenes. No hugging scenes. No holding hands. Lin Fengtian glanced at it and was so angry that he almost spat blood. These were Mu Yaja's specific requirements, but just these 4 rules and regulations were enough to drive him crazy. How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to do that? Is Chairman Mu crazy? When he brought this order to Mu Yaja to reason with him, no matter how he tried to reason with him, Mu Yaja simply said, "Do it if you want. Otherwise, get lost." Qin Ju immediately tried to calm him down. "Director Lin, take it easy. You're still in Chairman Mu's territory. How dare you speak ill of him?" Lin Fengtian felt that he was about to have a stroke. He was not allowed to do this or that. Was he looking for a stunt double? Chapter 494. Could it be that they had to find a body double to complete the scenes of kissing and holding hands in a youth film? "We have to find a body double for kissing and a hand double for holding hands. Why is it so difficult to film a movie?" Qin Ju immediately corrected him. "We have to find 2. Xingzi said that he doesn't want to do kissing or holding hands with a body double. He's a clean freak, so we have to find a few body doubles for him." Lin Fengtian's blood boiled when he heard that. Bastard. He could only curse in anger. Because Mu Yaja had spoken. There was no need to worry about the budget. Huan Yu had plenty of money, so he could spend as much as he wanted. However, if any of these rules were violated, the movie would be scrapped. Qin Ju touched his chin. He felt that the relationship between Yoon Shusha and Chairman Mu was somewhat intriguing. Who is this Yoon Shusha? Why does Chairman Mu take care of her so much? An assistant director wondered. Take care of her? Is this taking care of her? Come on. I've changed the script of the kissing scene several times, and now it's going to be ruined by 2 body doubles? Lin Fengtian felt a headache coming on. Lin Fengtian's heart ached when he thought about how only 2 body doubles were needed for his meticulously revised script. He had high hopes for Yoon Shusha and felt that this newcomer had quite a lot of potential. Perhaps after this movie was released, she would become the next Han Yuyen. No, she would definitely surpass her. After 10 years of sharpening his sword, Lin Fengtian was full of confidence in this movie. It was a big production with a big budget. With the top film team in the country, coupled with Jiyu Xingzi's huge popularity, He was even looking forward to setting a record for the movie's box office. However, Mu Yaja had given him so many restrictions that his hands and feet were tied when he unleashed them. Lin Fengtian was a little angry. What could he do? What else could he do? Who was Mu Yaja? He was the crown prince of Disheng Financial Group. Everyone in Huanyu Entertainment had to follow his orders. What was the use of his protest? Thus, Lin Fengtian cursed Mu Yaja in his heart as he hurriedly went to look for a substitute. At noon, Qin Ju invited Yun Shusha to have lunch in a Chinese restaurant. During the banquet, he told her about this matter. Yun Shusha was a little surprised when she heard this. Is this all Mu Yaja's request? In her heart, while she was surprised, she also felt an inexplicable sweetness towards Mu Yaja's dominance and possessiveness. Yes. Director Lin was so angry that he almost had a stroke. Qin Ju said. Yun Shusha didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're exaggerating. Shusha, let me ask you, what is your relationship with Chairman Mu? He seems to be very interested in you. Qin Ju was a little gossipy. Mr. Qin, even you are so nosy. In this line of work, gossiping has become second nature. The two of them chatted for a while, and the waiter served the dishes one by one. She accidentally spilled tea on her skirt. The waiter immediately turned pale with fright and apologized profusely. Sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. Forget it. It's fine. Yun Shusha waved her hand. Fortunately, she was wearing a black skirt today, so it was not a big deal. She raised her head to acknowledge Qin Ju and got up to go to the bathroom to clean herself up. Wanru, you don't look well recently. Did you not rest well? Chapter 495. Mu Wanru elbowed him harshly and warned him coldly, I'm warning you, don't be too intimate with me outside, lest others see us. I know. Aaron took half a step back and reluctantly kept a distance from her. He leaned against the wall and quietly watched her back. Still, he felt satisfied. Mu Wanru glared at him. She felt that provoking Aaron was her biggest mistake. This man was probably haunting her like a haunting ghost. She originally wanted to cut off all ties with him, but if she did so, she was afraid that he would reveal her secret. Hence, she unwillingly maintained their secret relationship. She would take it one step at a time. When the time was not right, she would get rid of him to prevent future trouble. Mu Wanru looked at the mirror again. Even with a thick layer of makeup covering her face, she could not hide her haggardness. These few days, she was distracted and did not rest well. Ever since that phone call, she had been having nightmares and could not sleep. She had a bad feeling about this. Thinking of this, Mu Wanru's face revealed a malevolent anger. These good-for-nothings. She really could not figure it out. How could they not even deal with a 6-year-old child? A child, only 6 years old, without the strength to even truss up a chicken, had actually failed the assassination. What was more frightening was that the assassin sent to carry out the mission was nowhere to be found. Initially, she was worried that her plan had been exposed, but after not hearing any news for a few days, she still felt uneasy. Now that she had failed this time, she could only come up with another plan. She was afraid that this failure would alert the enemy, and it would be difficult to strike again in the future. There was a reason why she was anxious to get rid of Yun Shusha and Yun Tianyu. Grandpa Mu's health was deteriorating by the day, so he paid more attention to the matter of the Mu bloodline returning to the family. She had nothing to fear from Yun Tianyu. He was just a child with an immature mind. How much of a threat could he pose to her? She didn't care at all. However, the mother-son relationship between Yun Tianyu and Yun Shusha was deep. If Yun Tianyu was acknowledged as a member of the Mu family, would Yun Shusha not be entangled with the Mu family? If she were to be careless and expose her identity, she would be finished. She had to get rid of these two thorns in her flesh before Grandpa Mu did. Mu Wanru applied her lip gloss in front of the mirror and smoothed it out. Then, she put the lip pencil into her bag. Suddenly, her expression changed. She lay in front of the counter and retched in pain. Blurg, Alan's expression changed. He immediately stepped forward and held her arm. He asked nervously, "What's wrong?" "It's nothing." Mu Wanru pushed him away. Before she could finish her sentence, she retched again. He felt nauseous, but he couldn't vomit anything out. He just felt inexplicably nauseous. It was extremely uncomfortable. Seeing her push him away, Alan's heart sank. Seeing her retching again, he hesitated for a moment before stepping forward to hold her shoulders. This time, perhaps because she was a little unsteady, Mu Wonru did not push him away. Seeing her back arched for a while, Alan frowned. Is it a stomach problem? Probably. Mu Wonru raised her head and looked at the mirror. Her expression was ugly. I'll go buy medicine for you. Chapter 496. It's okay. Mu Wonru leaned on him weakly and stroked her chest. I'm much better now. It's probably because I didn't eat breakfast, so why don't you take care of your body at all? Alan caressed her face with heartache. Mu Wonru clutched her chest and continued to retch inexplicably. Powerlessly, she raised her eyes and caught a glimpse of a standing figure reflected in the mirror. Her back suddenly stiffened, and her expression changed. Then, she pushed Ellen away. Ellen was still a little late, but when he saw her turn around with a pale face and stare straight ahead, he was shocked and followed her gaze and turned around. He saw Yun Shusha standing stiffly at the entrance of the washroom, her eyes darting back and forth between the two of them. Mu Wonru? Why was she with this man? She had wanted to go to the bathroom to clean up the water stains on her body, but just as she walked to the door, she saw Mu Wonru and Alan snuggling intimately together. From her angle, she could see Alan's hand on her waist. What shocked her even more was her retching just now due to morning sickness? Perhaps Mu Wonru was inexperienced and didn't know what that reaction meant. However, she had been pregnant for 10 months. When she was pregnant with Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen, her early pregnancy reaction was very serious. Therefore, she could tell at a glance that Mu Wonru's symptoms were similar to those of early pregnancy. Was she pregnant? Yun Shusha was shocked by her own suspicions and felt a chill in her heart. How was that possible? She clearly remembered that Mu Wonru was congenitally infertile. She couldn't get pregnant. Back then, because she couldn't get pregnant, the Mu family hired a surrogate mother at a sky-high price to preserve the family line. But what was Mu Wonru's reaction just now if it wasn't a symptom of morning sickness? Yun Shusha glanced at her face and saw that her gaze was weak and her complexion was terrible. Her heart sank. Could she really be pregnant? Mu Wonru saw her strange expression and frowned. At the same time, she felt guilty. When she thought about how this cheap woman was constantly threatening her position, a twisted hatred grew in her heart. She sneered and said coldly, "Bastard. Why do you keep staring at me?" Yun Shusha ignored her hostile tone and said in a daze, "You two seem to be very close." A trace of panic flashed across Alan's face. He quickly took half a step back and immediately explained, "I just saw that young Madame Mu was not feeling well, so I went up to show my concern." Seeing him sizing up the situation, Mu Wonru felt her ears tingle when he called her young Madame Mu. She raised her head high and revealed a proper and elegant smile. So what if this bitch has the ability to seduce people? Now, she is the young mistress of the Mu family and Mu Yaja's fiancé. A woman like Yun Shusha was just a casual toy Mu Yaja played with for a moment of interest. When he got tired of her, he would just throw her away. How could she not understand men? She would get rid of this thorn in her side sooner or later. It was just a fluke that she had escaped this time. Next time, she wouldn't be soft-hearted. Yun Shusha faintly tugged at the corner of her lips and said, "Since you know that she is young Madame Mu, don't you think that your concern is a bit excessive?" Chapter 497. A hint of guilt flashed through Mu Wonru's eyes, but she quickly pretended to be calm. Then, her gaze turned cold. She took a few steps forward and strode in front of her. She raised her hand high and slapped her face. Yun Shusha couldn't dodge in time and her face was slapped to the side. A red and swollen mark immediately appeared on his face. Yun Shusha's gaze froze. She caressed her burning cheek and stared at her in surprise. "Bitch! What are you looking at? Do you know what excessive means? I think you're the reincarnation of a vixen. You look pure and harmless, but you're born cheap." Mu Wonru gritted her teeth as she spoke. The anger and hatred in her eyes seemed to want to grind her bones into ashes. Yun Shusha was angered by her explicit and unrestrained words, and her eyes revealed a sullen expression. "What right do you have to call me cheap? You still dare to talk back?" Mu Wonru said as she stretched out her hand to slap her again. Yoon Shusha, on the other hand, grabbed her wrist tightly and gave her a tight slap in return. Mu Wonru's slap caused her to lose her balance. She staggered back a few steps and almost fell. Alan quickly went forward and supported her body. He glared fiercely at Yoon Shusha. "What are you doing? She hit me first. This is for her." Yoon Shusha replied calmly, without a trace of fear on her face. Mu Wonru covered her red and swollen cheek. Her eyes were filled with tears of grievance as she glared at her. She really wanted to step forward and teach Yoon Shusha a lesson, but before she could take a step forward, her chest started to retch again. She tugged at her clothes and stopped in her tracks. Her eyes were fierce as she glared at Yoon Shusha. A cheap person is a cheap person. She was born cheap. Yoon Shusha was shocked when she heard this. There seemed to be a flash of white light in his mind. The scenes buried deep in her memory flashed before her eyes like a merry-go-round. In the fragmented memory fragments, a beautiful girl who looked like a proud little princess pushed her to the ground, pointed at her condescendingly, and mocked, "B*TCH will always be a B*TCH, born to be a B*TCH. Suddenly, he had a splitting headache. It was as if something was breaking out of her head. She rubbed her throbbing forehead as she looked coldly at Mu Wonru's malevolent and distorted face. Her thoughts were in a whirl. 15 years ago, as far as she could remember, she had never seen her father when she was young. Her impression of her mother was that she was as beautiful as poison, arrogant and elegant. She also had a younger brother. For as long as she could remember, the three of them depended on each other for survival. Although they were a little tight on money, she felt that those were the happiest times of her life. When she returned home, she had her mother and her younger brother. She loved to snuggle with her younger brother on the bed. Her mother would open a fairy tale book for them by the bedside and read it word by word in a gentle voice. In such a voice, they would fall into sweet dreams. But even this peace was ruthlessly broken when she was 9 years old. A car accident had sent the broken family into hell. In that car accident, if it wasn't for her mother's protection, she wouldn't have survived. And if it wasn't for her mother protecting her, her mother and younger brother wouldn't have lost their lives. Chapter 498. Not long after she struggled to climb out of the car and drag her brother out, the car was completely destroyed. Due to her severe injuries, she fainted. When she regained consciousness, she had minor injuries all over her body, and her brother was nowhere to be found. Her mother was eventually declared dead. Just before the death notice was issued, she held her injured arm and watched helplessly as her mother was pushed into the cold morgue. She followed along stiffly without crying or shedding a single tear. She seemed to have forgotten what tears tasted like. Her mother did not have many friends when she was alive, and her funeral was taken care of by kind-hearted people in society. After all, she did not have any relatives, and they pitied her, so the funeral was hastily arranged. After that, she was hospitalized for a whole month. She could not even remember how she survived. She dreamed in the middle of the night, and her heart was cold and desolate. It was only on the day of her discharge that she understood in her heart. From then on, she knew that she would be left alone. Other than a jade pendant, her mother did not leave her anything else. She remembered that her mother used to wear this jade pendant close to her body and never left it. As for her background, her mother never mentioned a word about it. As for her grandfather and father, she kept her mouth shut. However, she still remembered that the place her mother mentioned was the Hua family, a place she hated all her life. The person she mentioned was called Mu Sheng, the person she hated the most in her life. He was a cruel executioner. The number of times he mentioned the Mu family could be counted with one hand. As for her father, he never mentioned it. As she did not have any relatives, after a series of procedures, she was sent to a private welfare home. That place became her lifelong nightmare. Perhaps that memory was too dark, and she did not want to remember it. It was as if she had selective amnesia, and her memory of that place was no longer clear. Until Mu Wonru said, B*ST* road will always be a B*ST* road, born to be a B*ST* road. It made her recall that when she was young, There was once a girl who pointed at her and cursed her like this. When she first entered the welfare home, she was quickly assigned to her own dormitory. In the 20-square-meter room, 16 children were squeezed in. There were 8 beds and 2 floors. It was extremely crowded. There was a girl in the same dormitory with her. Everyone called her Xiao Ru. She was beautiful and generous. Like other children, she longed to be adopted by a rich family. She was different from other children. In his memory, she was always dressed up beautifully. She was beautiful and had many beautiful dresses. She always had a lot of candy and snacks. She was like a little princess who was doted on by thousands of people. She was the moon surrounded by stars, high and mighty. The director and teachers of the orphanage loved her very much. She even had a large group of fans among the children. She was like a little fairy. Everyone liked her and spoiled her. At that time, she still hadn't gotten over the pain of losing her mother. She was a little autistic and didn't like to talk, so other children didn't like to play with her. This girl was the first to talk to her. When she was lonely and helpless, she gave her a candy and said to her, "My name is Xiao Ru. What's your name? Let's be good friends." She thought that this girl was the little angel. She was kind and willing to help others. Chapter 499. She had always been grateful to this girl. Until one day, when she walked into the washroom, she heard a rustling sound coming from one of the cubicles. Then, she heard a series of faint gasps, accompanied by the sound of struggling. Shiro's nervous and scared voice came through. "Dean, be gentle. Shiro hurts. Woo-woo. Shiro, be good. Shiro, don't shout. Don't let others hear you. Dean, can we not do that today? Shiro will help you with my mouth, okay? Okay, Shiro is so good. I'll buy you candy later." She was shocked when she heard the dean's tense voice. At that time, she was young and ignorant and didn't understand what was going on. She only knew that this was a girl's washroom and didn't understand why the dean would appear here. She walked closer to the cubicle with doubts. The door was locked from the inside, but through the small gap, she was surprised to see the dean standing upright with his back against the door. From her angle, the dean's pants were pulled down to his legs, and Shiro's clothes were half off as she knelt on the ground. Her head kept moving, but she couldn't see what they were doing. She moved closer, but her face accidentally bumped into the door, which alarmed the 2 people inside. Shiro was shocked. She raised her head guiltily and looked at the door with a pair of frightened eyes. Shusha couldn't dodge in time and their eyes met. At that time, she was inexplicably flustered. Maybe it was because Shiro's eyes were too dark and scary, or maybe it was because the embarrassment and anger in Shiro's eyes had been discovered that scared her. She quickly ran back to her room. That night, when Shiro came back, she was reading a comic book on the bed. Pushing the door open, Shiro strode to her bedside and pulled her off the bed by her hair. Leaning against her ear, Shiro's voice was threatening and angry. "Did you see? What did you see?" She was frightened and shook her head, but she didn't understand why Shiro was so flustered. Shiro got up and kicked her. She stood up and accused the other children while crying, "She bullied me. I didn't." Without waiting for her to explain herself, the other children rushed up angrily, punching and kicking her. Among the children, Xiao Ru's words were like an imperial edict, because she treated every child very well. She would give them snacks to eat and play with them. Among the children, her words were absolute. No child dared to disobey her. That night, she was sent to the infirmary with injuries all over her body. She didn't even understand what had happened, but somehow, she had become everyone's public enemy. The next day, she realized that the jade pendant she had placed under her pillow was gone. She asked everywhere, but no one said that they had seen it. When she saw the jade pendant hanging around Xiao Ru's neck, she immediately said excitedly, "That's my jade pendant." Xiao Ru retorted, "What are you talking about? This is my jade pendant. My mother gave it to me. You're the one who stole my stuff, you thief." "I'm not a thief." In the face of everyone's doubts, her pale and weak explanation seemed a little hollow. "That jade pendant was originally mine. It's mine. I'm not a thief. I'm really not a thief." Chapter 500. Xiao Ru's harmless smile was very lovable and it quickly aroused the anger of all the children. How could Princess Xiao Ru steal your things? You're the thief. You're clearly lying. You're lying. She was unable to defend herself and could only watch as her mother's relic was taken by someone else. Compared to the sweet-looking Xiao Ru, she was like Cinderella. No one was willing to believe her and no one was willing to stand in her position. From then on, all the children treated her like snakes and scorpions, as if she was a vicious and bad child. Later on, one morning, Xiao Ru was called over by the teacher and never came back. According to the other children, Xiao Ru was adopted by a rich family. It was said that the family was very rich and gave the director a lot of benefits. They even helped to build a few projects in the Welfare Institute. The children said that the rich family came to the Welfare Institute to acknowledge their relatives. When they saw the jade pendant on Xiao Ru, they took her away. Xiao Ru never came back. The children were all amazed and envious. To be adopted by a good family was something that many children envied. Suddenly recovering from her thoughts, Yun Shusha suddenly raised her head. Her eyes were red and the expression on her face was angry and gloomy. Those dark memories instantly broke out of their cocoons. Those past events that she didn't want to look back on were all vivid in her mind. It was her. She was that child. She was the one who stole her jade pendant and framed her as a thief. It was her who caused her to be bullied, ostracized, and mocked by so many children. Yun Shusha took a step closer to Mu Wonru and slowly stretched out her hand. Her voice was cold and firm. "Return the jade pendant to me." When Mu Wonru heard this, her heart trembled. She stared at her in disbelief. Her eyes flickered with bewilderment and her face turned pale. Did she recognize him? How could it be? Her appearance was so different from when she was young. How could she recognize her? You're Xiao Ru, right? Yun Shusha's lips curled up coldly. She opened her palm and stared straight at her. Her eyes were bloodshot and she looked extremely miserable. I don't know what you're talking about. Mu Wonru kept dodging his gaze as she retreated step by step, trying to defend herself with a pale face. Now that things have come to this, how much longer are you going to pretend? Yun Shusha's eyes widened in indignation. Tears welled up in her eyes as her voice trembled. That jade pendant. Return that jade pendant to me. That's the last thing my mother left me. Please give it back to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Mu Wonru was forced into a corner by her. She let out a hysterical shriek as her face turned pale and blood drained from her face. Alan nervously held onto Mu Wonru's shoulder and looked at Yun Shusha, who was walking towards her, with vigilance in her eyes. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Yun Shusha bit her lips hard. She clenched her fists tightly, and tears flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. Those dark memories broke out of the cocoon and lingered in her mind, unable to be dispersed. The torment and bits of her time in the orphanage were like red-hot iron, leaving an indelible memory in her heart. Chapter 501. Screaming at the top of her lungs had almost exhausted all of her strength. Yun Shusha staggered towards her, but her eyes were fixed on her. It's time to return it to me. Give me back what you have taken from me. That jade pendant. Can you return it to me? Mu Wonru. Shut up. Stop talking. Mu Wonru was on the verge of breaking down as she covered her ears. What nonsense are you spouting? I didn't steal anything from you. I didn't. You're slandering me. I'm not a thief, you're the thief. Stop talking. Stop talking. You shut up. Otherwise, I'll tear your mouth apart. After shouting agitatedly, Mu Wonru's body swayed, and her eyelids twitched violently a few times. Her legs went soft, and she fainted in Alan's arms. Alan turned pale with fright. He hugged her and called out a few times in a panic, "Wonru? What's wrong with you?" Seeing that she had fainted, Alan's heart ached. He carried her horizontally, raised his head abruptly, and fiercely glared at Yun Shusha. Are you satisfied now? Are you satisfied now? Vicious woman, are you going to force her to death before you stop? After saying that, he carried Mu Wonru and strode out of the door. Yun Shusha stood rooted to the ground in a daze. She laughed mockingly, but her heart could not stop chilling. Was she satisfied? Was she a vicious woman? How could this man be so ridiculous? How could this world be so ridiculous? Was Mu Wonru the victim? Was she a vicious woman? Mu Wonru was the thief. She stole the last thing her mother left for her, and even made her suffer thousands of curses, countless cold eyes, ridicule, and abuse. In the end, she was accused of being vicious. Didn't she think it was too ridiculous? Did Mu Yaja know? Does he know about this? Wasn't Mu Wonru recognized by the Mu Jiao because of that jade pendant? Then, did he know that the real owner of this jade pendant was her? Was Mu Wonru pregnant? Her morning sickness was so obvious just now. She must be pregnant. Yes. Was it his child? It should be his child. Who else could it be? Mu Wonru was his fiancé, so what did he mean by those words he said to her earlier? Those words about announcing their relationship to the world were a joke to her, weren't they? Was she really that gullible? Did she really believe a simple promise? Did she really think that he would promise her the whole world? But in the end, his fiancée was pregnant. Wasn't Mu Wonru unable to get pregnant? Then what was this? The intense argument attracted the attendants to inquire about the situation. Yun Shusha lost her balance and fell to the ground. Her trembling hands slowly covered her pale face. Her eyes were empty and hopeless. Qin Ju heard the news and rushed over. Seeing her lying on the ground, he was shocked and immediately went forward. Shusha, what's wrong? Yun Shusha's eyes were wide open and her voice trembled. Qin Ju. I'm not a thief, do you believe me? Qin Ju was confused by her sudden question. Not knowing the cause and effect, he laughed dryly and said blankly, Shusha, what are you talking about? How can you be a thief? I'm not a thief. Chapter 502. But, they're all saying that I'm the thief. Yun Shusha covered her eyes and burst into tears. It was as if she had returned to the orphanage more than 10 years ago. She was surrounded by those children and listened to those cold fingers pointing at her. The memories that she had suppressed for more than 10 years suddenly broke through the cage. Those piercing voices of doubt, those malicious speculations, and those sinister accusations all lingered around her ears. Those vicious punches, kicks, and curses echoed over and over again. It was like a saw cutting back and forth in her heart, tormenting her over and over again. The noise in her ears caused her to break down. Yun Shusha covered her ears hard as if she was about to suffocate. She cried out loudly, I'm not a thief. I'm really not a thief. Mu Wonru is the thief. She's the thief. She stole my things. That's my things. Qin Ju raised his head and looked around, only to see that the waiters around him were also embarrassed. The polite smiles on their faces gradually became stiff, and they looked at each other. When they saw Qin Ju's puzzled look, they all shook their heads. They had just arrived and didn't know what had happened. When she heard the commotion and rushed over, she was already in a daze and talking to herself like a puppet. Qin Ju lowered his head again and looked at Yun Shusha. Her eyes were tightly shut and her body couldn't stop trembling because of immense fear. She knelt on the ground and carefully curled up into a ball. Her shoulders couldn't stop shaking. Her helpless and desperate look made Qin Ju's heart ache. He didn't know what had happened, but seeing her frightened and flustered look, he couldn't care less about arousing suspicion. He reached out his hands and hugged her shoulders, pulling her into his embrace. Gently placing his palm on her head, he stroked her hair over and over again. Lowering his head, he comforted her gently, Shusha, I believe you. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Yun Shusha clenched her teeth tightly. The auditory hallucinations in her ears almost destroyed her consciousness. After so many years, the mocking, insults, and accusations suddenly erupted as her memories awakened, tormenting her endlessly. Back then, if only one person had stood up, believed in her, and protected her, things wouldn't have turned out this way. She desperately wanted to forget those nightmarish scenes, but now that the memories were out of the cage, the grievances and panic that she had suppressed for many years once again collapsed like a mountain. Qin Ju saw that she was unable to recover from the setback. He gritted his teeth and helped her up, but her legs were weak. He had no choice but to carry her. Qin Ju drove back to his apartment with Yun Shusha instead of going back to the company. After carrying her into the apartment, Chin-ju carried her to the bed and covered her with a blanket. Yoon Shusha lowered her head and burrowed under the blanket. Her body curled up into a ball and she hugged herself tightly like a person who had no sense of security and was extremely helpless to protect herself. Chin-ju sighed, but there was nothing else he could do. He kept asking her questions along the way, but she kept curled up in the corner of the back seat with her head lowered. She didn't seem to hear a single one of his questions, and she didn't give him an answer. He had never seen a person lose control to such an extent. Chapter 503. Shusha, no matter what, why don't you take a break first? If you don't want to talk about it, I won't ask. But as long as you're willing to talk, I'll be your most loyal listener. Yoon Shusha buried her face deep in her palms. Under Chin-ju's comforting words, the sharp and hysterical accusations slowly receded like a tide. Yoon Shusha slowly raised her head. Her eyes were exposed outside the quilt. Her line of sight overlapped and slowly regained clarity. She looked up at Chin-ju and gradually calmed down. Sleep first. Chin-ju saw that she finally opened her eyes and looked at him with a gratified smile. Yoon Shusha only nodded quietly but still didn't say anything. Chin-ju tucked her in, got up, and walked out of the room. On the way, he closed the door for her. Yoon Shusha blinked and stared blankly at the ceiling. Gradually, she fell asleep. In the hospital, Moo Wonru lay unconscious on the bed in the consultation room. Alan sat at the desk and looked at the doctor's face from time to time. He nervously asked about the situation. What's the situation? The doctor pushed up the glasses on his face and calmly raised his head to glance at him. Then, he continued to write and draw on the medical record card. Alan couldn't sit still and urged again, Doctor, what's the situation with her? Who are you to her? The doctor asked expressionlessly. Alan was stunned for a moment, but he said guiltily, just a friend. Friend? I think you two are quite close. You don't look like friends. The doctor had some doubts in his eyes. Alan asked awkwardly, is that important? Of course it's important. If you're her family or boyfriend, I might have to congratulate you. But you said you're just her friend. I suggest you call her family and ask them to come to the hospital. The doctor said and lowered his head to write on the medical record book again. Alan's face froze for a moment. He didn't understand the meaning of her words for a moment, but he was keenly aware that there was some mystery in her words, so he asked again, is she sick? The doctor frowned. Do you know her family? Call her family and ask them to do a test to see if she's pregnant. Pregnant? Ellen stared blankly for a long time, thinking that the doctor was joking with her. She couldn't help but doubt his professionalism. Doctor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you sure she's pregnant? We still need to do further tests to confirm whether I'm pregnant or not. What's wrong? The doctor sneered, Sir, do you think I'm joking about such a serious matter? That's impossible. Alan hesitated for a while before saying slowly, she was found to be infertile. Because of this, her family even invited a doctor, but they all said that she was congenitally infertile. How is that possible? This girl's body is clearly very simple. What's the basis of those doctors saying that she's infertile? The doctor found it ridiculous. Since you don't believe me, take her to do an HCG examination. We'll get the results soon. It's useless for you to waste your breath on me. Alan frowned, but he hesitated for a long time without making up his mind. He also wanted to do an HCG examination for her to see what was going on. Chapter 504. What if she was really pregnant? Although this hospital was a private hospital, the Mu family would be able to find out if there were any medical records left in any medical center in the capital. What if she was really pregnant? In less than 2 days, the news would spread to the Mu family. He remembered that Mu Wonru and Mu Yaja had never had any physical contact. But now, there was news that she was pregnant. Mu Wonru had to kill him. Let's not bother about whether she was fertile or not for the time being. Even if she was really pregnant, the child in her stomach could not be saved. If the test was done and she was really pregnant, then, to a wealthy family, a premarital pregnancy, and the child was not even Mu Yaja's, was undoubtedly a huge scandal. Thinking about it carefully, it was not impossible for her to be pregnant. When he did it with her, it was probably because he knew that she was infertile. He was a little fearless, so he had never taken any safety measures. It was not impossible for her to be pregnant. Alan stood up and said, "I'll make a decision after I inform her family. Today, I'll send her home first." The doctor looked up blankly and said, "Oh." He felt that this man was really strange, but he did not think much about it. He only told him a few things to take note of and let him pay the registration fee. When Alan carried Mu Wonru to the car, Mu Wonru had already woken up. Seeing that she had woken up, Alan was nervous. "You're awake. Where is this?" Mu Wonru had a splitting headache. She rubbed between her eyebrows and looked out of the window. When she saw the hospital sign, she was stunned. "Why are you in the hospital? You fainted just now." "So, I was worried about you and sent you to the hospital." Alan was halfway through his words when he stopped abruptly and did not continue. He was still considering whether to tell her about this matter. Now that she was only pregnant, it was not confirmed if it was true. Mu Wonru did not know what he was thinking. She suddenly recalled what happened before she fainted. Thinking of Yoon Shusha's horse accusations, her heart stopped for a few seconds. She bit the tip of her thumb uneasily and panicked. Did she find out? Did she remember what happened before? How much did she know? Did she only remember that she had stolen her jade pendant, or did she know what status this jade pendant represented? Damn it! Seeing her flustered expression, Alan recalled the doctor's words and finally decided to confess to her. "Wonru, what is it? Speak." She was distraught, so her tone was unkind. Ellen hesitated for a few seconds before asking slowly, "What exactly happened when you were found to be infertile?" He suddenly brought up this topic. Mu Wonru was startled for a moment, and then she felt a dull pain in her heart. She said with an unhappy expression, "Why are you suddenly asking this?" Her inability to conceive had always been the most unforgettable thing in her heart. If she could have children, perhaps she would have married Mu Yaja long ago. It was because she couldn't get pregnant that her position in the Mu family was unstable. Since ancient times, rich and powerful families had always relied on their sons to rise in status. If he didn't have children by his side, he wouldn't have any status. It was precisely because of this that she was unable to bear a child for Mu Yaja. Naturally, her position would not be stable. Chapter 505. Mu Wonru's heart was filled with grievances and heartache. She clenched her teeth and said with tears in her eyes, "If it wasn't for my infertility, maybe I would have married him long ago." "What do you mean? Tell me clearly." Alan was anxious and asked again. Mu Wonru recalled and said, 6 years ago, he and I were about to get engaged, but he said that he had to do a routine physical examination before the engagement. But in the end, the doctor told me that I was born infertile and could not have children. Grandpa thought of many ways and invited many doctors to treat me, but they all said that I had no hope of getting pregnant in my life. How could it be? Alan frowned in surprise. One side said that there was no problem with Mu Wonru's body, and the other side brought in authoritative experts, who were sure that she could not get pregnant at all. The two sides contradicted each other, and it was really puzzling. Whether she was pregnant or not, the general doctor could diagnose what the problem was. Infertility, on the other hand, was a profound mystery. Which side was the problem? How would I know? Mu Wonru said with tears in her eyes. Those authoritative experts were all sent by Mu Yaja from authoritative medical centers all over the country, and they were all authoritative professors. They all said so. What can I do? What can I do? I wanted to try, but he didn't give me a chance at all. He didn't even touch me. He really didn't touch you? Alan asked doubtfully. It's true. He really hates me. She laughed self-deprecatingly. There was one time when he was a little drunk. I helped him to the bed. Originally, I wanted to, but he pushed me away. I even doubted that he was a normal man. Even if I stood naked in front of him, he didn't have any reaction. He didn't want to touch me at all. He hated touching me. She put her chin on her knees and murmured, "That's why I was so jealous of Yoon Shusha and hated her so much. If I could give birth to a son or a daughter for the Mu family, would it be her turn to compete with me?" A trace of suspicion appeared on Alan's face. He furrowed his brows, feeling that there was something fishy about this whole thing. Mu Wonru looked at him and said angrily, "What's with your expression? Wonru, if I told you that you might be pregnant, would you believe me?" Alan hesitated as he told her the things that were bothering him. From time to time, he would look at the changes in her expression. Mu Wonru was stunned for a long time, then suddenly sneered and said, "Have you had enough?" Alan was stunned. "I can't get pregnant at all, and I can't give birth. Is that enough? What do you mean by that? Do you want me to question the words of those authoritative experts?" Alan said, "But, I just sent you to the hospital. And then?" She rolled her eyes disapprovingly. "The doctor said that you have some signs of pregnancy. He asked me to do an HCG test for you." Mu Wonru was stunned for a moment. In a daze, she mumbled, "How is that possible? It's impossible for me to get pregnant. Wonru, think about it carefully. Are you sure you're infertile? You can't believe the words of those experts completely. No one knows your body better than you, right?" Chapter 506. Think about it again. We've done it so many times, but we've never taken any safety measures. Do you think it's a coincidence that you're showing signs of pregnancy at this time? Do you have any signs of early pregnancy in the past 2 days? I saw you retching a little before. Is that a symptom of morning sickness? Every word that he said was very convincing, and there was indeed some truth to it. Mu Wonru fell silent. Indeed, she and Alan had done it so many times. Perhaps it was because she knew that she was infertile and couldn't get pregnant, so Mu Wonru didn't take it to heart and didn't take any safety measures. Similarly, Alan didn't take any protection measures. But thinking about it carefully, there was indeed something wrong with the past few days. Every morning before breakfast, she would feel nauseous. At first, the symptoms weren't serious. She endured it and didn't think too much about it. Over the past few days, the dizziness and weakness had become more and more serious. She had no appetite and always felt inexplicably tired. She just blamed it on the nightmares and lack of sleep. Because of that incident, she had been feeling uneasy for the past few days. She had even neglected one thing. Her period had indeed been delayed for a long time and hadn't come for a long time. Her physical fitness was good. Every time her period came, it would come on time. At most, there would only be a deviation of 2 or 3 days. But now, it had been delayed for more than a week. This was already very abnormal for her. At first, she didn't realize it and only thought that it was normal for her to not sleep well. Now that she thought about it carefully, she couldn't help but be shocked. Mu Wonru's face suddenly turned ugly. She lowered her head in disbelief and covered her lower abdomen with her hands. Her palms were gently pressed against her abdomen, and her eyes were full of disbelief. She was pregnant. At the thought of this possibility, her heart was suddenly filled with mixed feelings. She didn't know whether to be happy or worried. What did this mean? Was he joking with her? Wasn't she born infertile? Those experts said with certainty that she would never be able to get pregnant or have children in her life. Then why did she have the reaction of early pregnancy now? Although she had no experience in pregnancy, after Alan's reminder, she did notice a series of strange reactions in her body over the past few days. It was very similar to the symptoms of pregnancy. Was she really pregnant? In other words, she wasn't infertile. She still had a chance to get pregnant and give birth to a child for the Mu family. When Mu Wonru thought of this, and thought that she might be able to have a child with Mu Yaja, a child that belonged to them, her own child, her heart was filled with great joy. She trembled as she covered her face. Her eyes were filled with tears of agitation, and her throat felt tight. Mu Wonru widened her eyes in surprise. She suddenly got up slightly, grabbed Ellen's collar, and said ecstatically, "You said I might be pregnant. In other words, I still have a chance to get pregnant." Ellen stared at her face, which was twisted and ferocious because of her surprise. For a moment, her heart was filled with great sorrow, joy, and worry. On one hand, his heart ached. His heart ached that she might finally be able to fulfill her dream of being a mother. Now, the child in her stomach was his. Vaguely, he felt a sense of responsibility as a father. Chapter 507. What was he? Had it been his wishful thinking all this while? Or could it be that the woman he loved was just using him from the beginning to the end? Seeing his dazed expression, Mu Wonru's smile froze. She asked, "Alan, aren't you happy for me?" Alan raised his eyes and stared at her, but he didn't say a word. Mu Wonru held her abdomen as her lips curled into a radiant smile. "I can get pregnant. I'm not infertile. I can give birth to a child for Mu Yaja. This child might even be the future heir of the Mu group. Isn't this something to be happy about?" Wonru, Alan's eyes were a little obscure. He gently lowered his eyes and held her shoulders tightly. The corner of his lips curled up into a bitter arc. "First of all, I'm sincerely happy for you that you can get pregnant. Mu Wonru smiled. Her gaze was so soft that it seemed like water was about to drip out. Ellen's next sentence stunned her as if she had been struck by lightning. "But haven't you thought about it? Whose child is the father of the child in your stomach?" "Wonru, that's our child, not yours and Mu Yaja's. Wonru, will you give birth to him?" Mu Wonru's body stiffened like a rock. She was stunned. Seeing her frozen expression, Alan's heart ached. A hint of sadness flashed across his eyes. He leaned over and sat beside Mu Wonru. He pulled her into his arms and said gently, "Wonru, you might be pregnant. If you're really pregnant, then this child is our child. I'm willing to acknowledge him and take responsibility for you. Deep down, I don't want to abort him. What about you? Are you willing to give birth to him?" Mu Wonru's gaze changed. She clenched her fists subconsciously, and a cold glint flashed in her eyes. He wanted her to give birth to this child? How was that possible? Yes, how could she forget? She was pregnant, but whose child was the father of the child in her stomach? It wasn't Mu Yaja's, but Alan's. This was the product of infidelity, a vile spawn. How could she have given birth to him? If the Mu Yaja knew that she was pregnant and the child was not his, with Mu Yaja's methods, he would definitely wipe them out personally. By then, so what if Grandpa Mu dotes on her? In a wealthy family, it was taboo for a woman to be unfaithful to her husband. This was undoubtedly a huge scandal. If the Mu family knew about this, they would never let her off. Thinking of this, Mu Wonru's originally joyful expression receded like the tide, and suddenly became as pale as a sheet of paper, her forehead oozing with fear and cold sweat. "We can't keep this child. Why?" Alan's eyes widened in shock. He pulled her body tightly and forced her to face him. He asked bitterly, "This child is your flesh and blood. It's your first child. How can you be so cruel? What can I do? What can I do?" Mu Wonru clutched his chest tightly and retorted with a pale face. "Keep him here. Keep this vile spawn. Alan, this is infidelity. This child is the product of infidelity. Don't forget, I'm Mu Yaja's fiancée, the future young mistress of the Mu family. I'm going to be young Madam Mu. How can I keep your child? Are you dreaming?" Chapter 508. What's incestuous? What's a vile spawn? That's your child. How can you be so heartless as to call him a vile spawn? Alan gripped her shoulders tightly, his eyes bloodshot and staring straight ahead. Mu Wonru was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, she sneered and asked, "Alan, don't tell me you're really in love with me." Alan was stunned and looked at her in disbelief. Mu Wonru continued, "Don't tell me you're really in love with me. Alan, we're just fooling around. It's better if you don't get too involved. To you, I'm just a physical need, so." Although she was a woman, sometimes she had physical needs too. Mu Yaja never touched her. As for Alan, she only had such thoughts at most. A man and a woman just took what they needed. Feelings. Who would talk about feelings with him? Enough. Alan could not take it anymore and interrupted her. "Mu Wonru, how can you be so cruel?" "Yes, I'm in love with you. Mu Wonru, I'm in love with you." Alan raised his eyes and stared deeply at her. He said word by word, "You've been lingering in my heart since university. I joined Disheng Financial Group because of you. Besides, don't you know whether I'm in love with you or not? You should know best. Also, you're using my feelings, but so what? I love you, so even if I have to sacrifice my life for you, I won't hesitate to do it." Mu Wonru was stunned. So, he could tell that she was using him? Was he an idiot? Now, can you understand my sincerity? Alan smiled sadly. Wonru, I love you. When I first found out that you might be pregnant, I was so happy that I almost went crazy. If you're willing to keep our child, I can take you away. No matter where you are, I'll protect you and not let you suffer. I'll do my best to give you the happiest life. Are you willing to go far away with me? Mu Wonru was stunned for a moment before she shook her head. Are you kidding? Alan's face fell into an ice cellar. How can I keep this child? You're selfish. I won't go with you. Mu Wonru pushed him away harshly and raised her head arrogantly. She sneered. I want to abort this child. From now on, let's break it off. Let's stop talking. I'll still be the young madam of the Mu family, and you'll be my fiancé's assistant. Let's stop talking. What? You know that you can get pregnant, so you're going to kick me away? Ellen smiled miserably, but he saw through her ruthlessness, and a bone-chilling chill arose in his heart. What do you mean by that? Mu Wonru glared at him fiercely. Shouldn't I be the one asking you this question? Alan's heart was filled with pain and disappointment. What's so good about being the young mistress of the Mu family? Can Mu Yaja give you happiness? Can he guarantee that you'll be the only one in his life? Stop dreaming. How do you know that he can't give me happiness? He'll be a good husband. He's different from you. He's a responsible man. He's the man that I, Mu Wonru, have taken a fancy to. Mu Wonru continued, as long as I let him know that I'm not infertile and can bear children for him, he won't be so cold to me. Chapter 509. You're the one who's dreaming. Alan said mercilessly. He only has Yun Shusha in his heart. He doesn't touch you because he already has another woman in his heart. That's why he's not interested in you at all. Shut up. Mu Wonru interrupted him with a ferocious look. He's just playing with Yun Shusha. He's a man after all. Don't I know him well? As for Yun Shusha, he's only interested in her for a while. After this heat, his feelings for her will fade, so he'll just abandon her. Do you think that an unorthodox woman like Yun Shusha can replace me? Alan smiled coldly and reminded her, have you forgotten? Do I need to remind you? Who exactly is the young madam of the Mu family? Everything you have now was snatched from Yun Shusha. Shut up. Mu Wonru shrieked and raised her hand to slap him. Slap. A ruthless slap landed on Alan's face. Alan did not stop there. If you hadn't snatched her jade pendant back then, old Master Mu would have brought her back to the Mu family by accident. The person by Mu Yaja's side now should be Yun Shusha, not you. Mu Wonru, haven't you realized the truth until now? Mu Yaja doesn't belong to you. You can't force things that don't belong to you. Shut up. Shut up, shut up. Mu Wonru covered her ears like a madwoman. When she saw that Alan did not intend to stop there, she raised her hand again, but Alan reached out and held it tightly. Wonru, even if you want to get rid of this child, tell me. How do you plan to hide it from the Mu family? How do you plan to get rid of this child without anyone knowing? Alan smiled, revealing his white teeth. Don't forget that the Mu family has spies in all the medical centers in the big capital. You should know how powerful the Mu family is, right? Or do you plan to go to a small clinic to get rid of it secretly? Mu Wonru was stunned for a while upon hearing this. How could she not know? All the medical centers in the capital were inextricably linked to the Mu family. Even if she escaped from the capital, it might not be too risky. Right now, only a small clinic could hide it from the public. Mu Wonru said, as long as I can get rid of this child, so what if it's a small clinic? Do you have the heart to degrade yourself? Alan was completely enraged. This is our child, a life. All right. Then I'll stay. Mu Wonru paused. Before Aaron could reveal a gratified smile, she coldly said, as the Mu family's descendant. What do you mean? Alan asked in shock and anger. You're too naive. Whether or not it's his child, do you think you can hide it from him forever? Alan could not help but mock her naivety. This has nothing to do with you. Mu Wonru said coldly, anyway, I can't go far away with you. Do you think everything will be fine if I just leave with you? Do you think the Mu family will let us go? Who's the naive one here? Chapter 510. That's enough. I don't want to hear your nonsense. You'd better keep your mouth shut about this matter before I come up with a compromise. I don't want anyone to know that I'm pregnant. We're still in the same boat now, so don't you dare play any tricks. Aaron smiled bitterly but did not say anything in the end. He got into the car expressionlessly. Mu Wonru sat in the car. Along the way, she lowered her head to look at her flat stomach. A complicated look flashed across her eyes. The Bentley slowly drove into the car park of Laji Holdings. Lee Hanlin alighted from the car, walked to the back seat, and opened the door. Yoon Tianyu alighted from the car, and Lee Hanlin bent down slightly to carry him. He raised his head to look at the tall building in the center of Laji Holdings and asked in a low voice, "Have you investigated that woman's matter?" "Yes, I have." "Let's go in." Lee Hanlin nodded and carried Yoon Tianyu into Laji Holdings. Along the way, the employees threw them surprised looks from time to time. A passing secretary saw Lee Hanlin carrying a delicate-looking little lad and was surprised to see him. She asked in surprise, "Agent Lee, you're here. Ah, this child is so adorable. Who is he to you?" Yoon Tianyu frowned unhappily and said lightly, "You still have the mood to chat during work hours?" Lee Hanlin immediately reprimanded, "Get back to work. Don't talk so much." Startled, the secretary quickly lowered her head and returned to her seat. He was a little surprised in his heart. This cute and immature child still had the air of a baby. Why was the moment he opened his mouth so imposing? He was so mature that he did not seem like a child at all. Lee Hanlin carried Yo-Yo into the office and placed him on the office chair. Yoon Tianyu leaned back gracefully and leisurely looked at the furnishings in the office. In a sense, this was the first time he stepped into Laji Holdings headquarters since he held 60% of the company's shares. Lee Hanlin brewed a cup of Ceylon black tea for him and then passed a thick stack of documents to him. "Is everything here?" "Yes. Everything is here." Yoon Tianyu took a sip of the black tea and then lowered his head to carefully read the information. He skimmed through it 10 lines at a glance. Suddenly, his brows slowly furrowed. According to the information, Mu Wonru's biological mother was a masseuse in a bar. She had a low status, and after giving birth to Mu Wonru, she abandoned her at the entrance of the hospital. After that, she was picked up by a couple. Until a car accident, she lost both her parents and was sent to the orphanage. When she was 9 years old, she was adopted by the Mu family and brought back. The information about the private welfare institute was also listed out in detail. Yoon Tianyu flipped through a few pages, and his eyes suddenly widened in shock. Lee Hanlin saw that his face was a little ugly, and his eyes fell on the information. According to the information, the director of the orphanage was sentenced to prison for child molestation 3 years ago. The list of victims included dozens of orphans in the orphanage, including young boys. The director of the orphanage was called Luo Hanjin, 50 years old. This incident had once caused a huge uproar in the city, and everyone knew about it. Most of the victims were young orphans who were still ignorant. The youngest among them was only 6 years old. Chapter 511. The police took this case very seriously and immediately launched an investigation after receiving the girl's confession. After a thorough investigation, Luo Hanjin was arrested. After his arrest, he denied all charges of child molestation, which led to strong protests from charity organizations. In the end, the charity organizations intervened and all the children in the orphanage were examined. The results showed that dozens of children had varying degrees of bruises on their bodies, and a few of them were infected with STDs. Finally, with conclusive evidence, Luo Hanjin was prosecuted and confessed to child molestation. At first, he tried to use his connections to suppress the matter, but unfortunately, this matter caused a strong social reaction and caused public outrage. Due to the serious nature of the case, which involved the rape of a child, the court sentenced him to life imprisonment. "What a beast!" Lee Hanlin shook his head. Yoon Tianyu frowned slightly. "I remember that mommy was adopted by Yoon Yecheng from this orphanage." Hearing this, Lee Hanlin's face turned solemn. "Director Yoon, are you worried that..." Yoon Tianyu clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His face was extremely ugly. "I want to see him," Lee Hanlin said, Luo Hanjin should still be serving his sentence in prison, but if you want to see him, I can arrange it. Arrange it immediately. Okay. Li Hanlin took out his phone and walked to the side. Yun Tianyu continued reading with a serious expression. At the end of the information was a list and photos of all the orphans adopted since the orphanage's opening. His eyes swept through the information and landed on one of the photos. In the photo, a beautiful girl with delicate features was looking expressionlessly at the camera. Her face was expressionless, and her eyes were empty and numb, as if there was a pool of dead water between her brows. Her jet-black hair set off her extremely thin cheeks. She seemed to be suffering from long-term nutritional imbalance. Her face was pale and dull. Her clothes looked very shabby and shabby. Was this Mommy when she was young? How could she be so thin? Yun Tianyu frowned with heartache. His slender fingers slowly caressed the photo, and his heart ached as if it were being pricked by needles. Mommy. Li Hanlin hung up the phone and walked over, only to see Yun Tianyu staring at a photo in a daze. Following his line of sight, Li Hanlin saw a photo of Yun Shusha taken at the welfare center when she was 9 years old and suddenly recalled something. When I went to the orphanage today, I learned some news. Speak. The staff at the orphanage mentioned that 15 years ago, a girl was ostracized by the teachers and children at the orphanage because of stealing. She even contracted depression because of that. Depression? Yes. Because of her depression, she once tried to go on a hunger strike. Later, she was sent to the hospital and received treatment for half a year. Because of this, when the girl was adopted, the family that adopted her donated a considerable amount of money to the Welfare Institute. This is the girl. His eyes turned cold as he slowly raised his head. Depression. Suicide. It's that serious. Yes, it's serious. Li Hanlin lowered his head and looked at the photo again. Suddenly, he felt that it looked familiar. Chapter 512. Thief. Thief, shameless thief. It's all because of you that Xiao left in a fit of anger. Why are you such a lowly thief? I'm not a thief, I'm really not a thief. In her sleep, Yun Shusha clutched the blanket tightly as sweat broke out on her forehead. The lights in the room suddenly turned on. Qin Ju pushed the door open and walked in. He had knocked on the door for a long time, but no one answered. He was worried about her, so he entered the room. At this moment, the sky outside the window had darkened. The night breeze blew in through the window, causing the curtains to flutter. He immediately walked over and closed the window. The slight movement woke up the person who was sleeping on the bed with a start. Yun Shusha opened her eyes. In her hazy vision, there was a ceiling. Then, she saw Qin Ju's smiling handsome face. Darling, you're awake? Yun Shusha felt a slight headache. She fell asleep in a daze, but the nightmares kept on waking her up. She slowly sat up on the bed. Qin Ju immediately picked up a cushion and placed it behind her back. When he touched her shoulder, his fingertips were scalded by her skin. His expression was slightly startled as he immediately placed his hand on her forehead and said in surprise, "You have a slight fever." Yun Shusha opened her eyes in a daze. She was not fully awake yet, so her reaction was a little slow. Qin Ju sighed and immediately rummaged through the cupboard to get the medicine box. He sat by her bed and took out a thermometer for her to put in her mouth. Yun Shusha did as she was told. A minute later, Qin Ju took out the thermometer and looked at it. It was 38 degrees. She had a fever. I guess the windows were open when you fell asleep. The apartment is like this. At night, the wind is especially cold. I'm afraid you've caught a cold. It's all my fault. Qin Ju was annoyed. He poured some warm water and urged her to take the medicine. Thank you. Why are you being so polite? Qin Ju joked. Shusha, you're lucky. Where else can you find such a gentle manager like me? Yun Shusha was amused by his narcissistic tone. Yes. I'm lucky to have a manager like you to take care of me. I must have done a lot of good deeds in my previous life. Of course. Qin Ju felt a little smug from her praise, and the two of them jokingly chatted for a while. Qin Ju suddenly smiled and asked, "Have you calmed down now?" Yun Shusha nodded slowly. Then tell me, what exactly happened at noon? Qin Ju's usual frivolous face was gone. It was rare for him to care about someone so seriously. Yoon Shusha was silent for a long time. Her gaze suddenly drifted away along with her thoughts. However, Chin Ju was very patient and did not disturb her. After a long time, Yoon Shusha slowly said, "These are all things of the past. I don't know if I should tell you." She had originally chosen to forget those memories, but today, after the argument with Mu Wonru, those unbearable memories seemed to have broken out of their cage. "If you're willing to tell me, then I'm willing to listen. If you're not willing, then I won't force you. However, I want you to know that even though I'm your manager in name, in my heart, I treat you like family. In the future, we'll be in the same boat and share weal and woe. So, you don't have to treat me like an outsider." Chin Ju's expression was serious, and his words were sincere. Yoon Shusha nodded and told him about the grievances between her and Mu Wonru. Chapter 513. Does this mean that Mu Wonru is the girl who stole your jade pendant 15 years ago? Chin Ju questioned. Yoon Shusha nodded, her eyes dark. I heard that Mu Wonru was adopted by the Mu family 15 years ago. It's said that Grandpa Mu had an adopted daughter whom he doted on very much. Her name is Mu Qingcheng. Although she's not of the Mu family's blood, Grandpa Mu treated her as his own and treated her as the apple of his eye. However, more than 20 years ago, Mu Qingcheng got pregnant out of wedlock. To cover up this scandal, Grandpa Mu ordered her to abort the child. Later, Mu Qingcheng went missing. In order to find his beloved adopted daughter, Grandpa Mu turned the entire capital upside down, but he still could not find her. Even so, there was still a clue, and he did not give up. Later, I heard that. Chin Ju's voice suddenly sank. Mu Qingcheng was found, but she's dead. Yoon Shusha's heart skipped a beat. Dead? Yes. She died in a car accident. It was too horrible to look at. Chin Ju shook his head helplessly. Grandpa Mu was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Later, he started looking for Mu Qingcheng's 2 children. Mu Qingcheng, Yoon Shusha said in a daze. I only know that my mother's surname is Chin and her name is Cheng. Didn't your mother mention your family background to you? He asked in confusion. No. Yoon Shusha shook her head. My mother has been very tight-lipped about my family background. She only told me that there's a Mu family in the capital, and that there's someone called Mu Sheng who's the cruelest executioner in the world. She told me not to step into their house no matter what. Mu Sheng. Chin Ju suddenly stood up agitatedly and said solemnly, there's only one Mu family in the capital, and the head of that family is Mu Sheng. Don't tell me that your mother is Mu Qingcheng? Yoon Shusha suddenly fell silent. Chin Ju continued, could it be that Mu Wonru stole your jade pendant, and that jade pendant is your mother's personal keepsake? Grandpa Mu recognized the keepsake and took Mu Wonru back to the Mu family as your mother's child? Probably, yes. So, you're the real daughter of the Mu family? Mu Yaja's real fiancée? Chin Ju raised his eyebrows slightly, feeling that life was truly a fantasy. All this time, the real daughter of the Mu family had been a fake. However, the real princess ended up in the human world by accident. This was too dramatic. It could be made into a TV series. I won't go back to the Mu family. I just want her to return the jade pendant to its rightful owner. Yoon Shusha looked up and said, that was the last thing my mother left me. Because of that woman's selfishness, I was at the mercy of others in the orphanage. The orphanage you're talking about, I think I have some impression of it. Chin Ju carefully recalled and suddenly slapped his forehead. Is the director of that orphanage called Luo Hanjin? Yoon Shusha's face froze when she heard that. Her face turned as white as a sheet in an instant. She never knew the name of the director of the orphanage, but in her heart, that man was undoubtedly a devil. A terrifying demon who should go to hell.